Chapter 1176, Wonderland. Chapter 1176, Wonderland, _. It was true that Shi Yin had promised her. He had agreed to do one thing for Cecilia even before he had anything ambiguous with Cecilia. He had almost forgotten it until Cecilia reminded him. He thought that Cecilia came to the ancient continent just to collect the treasures of water class. In the middle of the desert, Cecilia had harvested a lot of water heart crystals. He assumed that those crystals were the reason why she was here. Today, Shi Yin finally understood that he was completely wrong after listening to her. "You've agreed with me. Will you help me?" Cecilia begged him. Shi Yin smiled and nodded naturally. "It's true. I agreed with you. Of course, I will help you." Shi Yin and Cecilia walked behind the group. When Cecilia talked to him, she held his hand, so they had to stop walking for a while, which gave them a little distance from the others. People who walked in the front couldn't hear their conversation. Imofo was still scouting ahead. That strange lake stood in front of him where the images of the suns and the moons were reflected. However, there weren't only one sun and one moon. They counted and found 9 dazzling suns and 9 bright moons. Gray clouds stuck in the horizon. This place didn't have a single star, which made the reflections of the suns and the moons in the lake so odd. It made people not dare to act rashly. Imofo stopped. He urged his energy and tried to sense the surrounding. Audrey frowned and said, "We need to swim across the lake. The areas around the lake are even more perilous." No one dared to doubt Audrey. They changed their visage and studied the lake. Their hearts sank and felt helter-skelter. Audrey looked at Imofo and said indifferently, "You still need 2 more miles. You go first." Imofo's countenance changed. According to their agreement, they would take turns to scout. After he finished his 10 miles, the Wu brothers would take their turn. He had finished 8 miles. If that damn lake wasn't there, he could finish his turn smoothly. But now, Imofo wore a dark face. He accepted his unfortunate fate, sighing and preparing to jump into the lake. Wait a minute. However, at this moment, Shi Yin called out from their back and sauntered to their front. People didn't know what was going on, and they just turned around to look at him. Imofo had no clue. He asked, "Is there anything you want me to do for you?" He sounded friendly because Shi Yin had helped him many times during this trip. "You stay here. We will enter the lake first." Shi Yin turned to look at Cecilia. They now noticed Cecilia following him closely. Her charming face was stern. "You too?" Shang Yu screamed in surprise. Shi Yin waved his hand as he said, "That lake is a little strange. Let's go there first. We will notify you later." Imofo showed great gratitude. They all could see that the lake had something weird. Imofo had prepared to encounter dangers. At this critical point, Shi Yin suddenly took the responsibility. Although Imofo didn't know his intention, he had appreciated Shi Yin from the bottom of his heart. He had made up his mind that whenever Shi Yin and Audrey had a dispute, he would stand on Shi Yin's side. "Thank you." Imofo exhaled in relief. He backed off and said sincerely, "You must be careful. This lake isn't normal at all." Audrey frowned. She studied Shi Yin and then Cecilia and then snorted. She didn't voice her opinion in this. If Audrey didn't have any opinion, of course, no one would oppose it. They decided this task that way. When Shi Yin and Cecilia came by the lake, he gestured and said to the others, "Guys, back off. I need to talk to Cecilia." Audrey nodded. The other warriors stepped back and left Shang Yu at her spot, looking at Shang Yu and Cecilia worriedly. Shi Yin smiled and didn't mind Shang Yu, who stood still at her spot. He asked calmly, "Can you explain the situation now?" He looked at Cecilia. "I have an elderly teacher. 10,000 years ago, she used to visit this area," said Cecilia sadly. Her teacher cultivated water power Upanishad, and she had lived for more than 10,000 years. The last time this planet opened, she had come here with her husband. They had made it to the center of the ancient continent and reached this lake. Her husband went to the lake and sank little by little, as if he was pulled by something invisible and drowned. While he was sinking to the bottom of the lake, he sent his wife the soul message and asked her not to get into the lake no matter what. He told her to stay and wait for him. Cecilia's teacher had waited for him. Not long after that, The lake became normal and had no reflections. Everything became pretty normal. Cecilia's teacher couldn't sense any commotion of her husband. She entered the lake to search but found nothing. Her husband seemed to have vanished into thin air. Right after that, she stopped her expedition of this ancient continent to search the lake for years. When the ancient continent kicked her out, she hadn't found her husband yet. It became a sickness in her heart. Afterward, she left the ancient continent and returned to her life star. She had continued to search for her husband's whereabouts. Unfortunately, she didn't have a clue. She was sure that her husband had disappeared in this lake on the ancient continent. Perhaps he had been dragged into a strange domain or confined somewhere. Probably, he had died. She stopped yearning for the day she could reunite with her husband. However, she wanted to see his remains. Thus, she accepted a disciple and taught her skills and abilities. She had even tried to find a guiding fruit for her to send her to the ancient continent the next time. She hoped that her disciple could fulfill her wish. My teacher used to tell me that this lake has some power of water with the space power. She couldn't see its real competence. She told me that it would be possible to enter the lake when I go there with someone cultivates space power Upanishad. Then, we can decode the riddle of this lake. Cecilia looked at Yin. Yin suddenly understood. No wonder why Cecilia showed a deep interest in him when she saw him using space power Upanishad. Later on, she wanted to go with him and shoulder to fight Mia's team. Cecilia had wanted to count on his power earlier. Because he knew space power Upanishad. I want to enter the lake. I've promised my teacher to help her find her husband's remains. My teacher has done so many things for me to come here and to have my attainment today. I won't let her down. Cecilia looked at Yin tenderly. Please help me. All right. Yin smiled and agreed with her. He turned to Yu and said to her, You heard it, right? We know what had happened. I will jump to the lake with her. Don't worry. We will be all right. I'm going with you guys. Yu suggested all of a sudden. No need. Yin waved his hand to stop her. I can deal with it. You just stay here. Leave it to me. Yin didn't wait for Yu to talk more, directly jumping and pulling Cecilia into the lake. No water splashed. It seemed like they had just walked through a door and disappeared. Yu was scared. Yin and Cecilia had jumped into the lake. She saw it with her own eyes. However, she couldn't see any signal of them in the lake. Cecilia and Yin seemed to have vanished into thin air right at that moment. The lake was still clear and bright like a mirror with the reflections of the suns, moons, and the cotton clouds. Everything looked normal. Yu felt her hair rising on her nape. Where have Yin and Cecilia gone? Audrey, Mo, Sha Zhao, and the others also saw Yin and Yu jump into the lake. They dashed forward and stood by Yu to look at the lake skeptically. Yu took a deep breath. She told Audrey what she had found. Since she knew Audrey had a supernatural ability, she wanted to use her to find Yin and Cecilia. Audrey changed her visage. She immediately closed her eyes to urge the soul altar. She wanted to use the secret technique of the soul searching of the Imperial Dark Tribe. She set her soul consciousness to the lake. After a while, Audrey shook her head, her face cold. She confirmed, this lake doesn't have their auras. They then wore heavy faces. Don't rush. Yin isn't like the others. I think he could deal with it. Audrey contemplated for a while and then comforted them. We just have to wait here and see. Since they didn't have any better idea, they had to agree with her. They scattered by the lake and focused on the water, waiting for Yin's commotion in silence. Where are we? This is absolutely not the bottom of the lake. Cecilia looked at the sky and screamed in surprise. Yin also wore a strange countenance. Lifting his head to look at the sky, he mumbled, Is it a real world? The dark red sky held 9 suns and 9 moons arranged in some particular formation. The 18 suns and moons radiated the hot sunlight and the cold moonlight, which looked like a light column piercing through the sky and earth to illuminate this area. The ground under their feet was like a massive crystal with dazzling light streamers moving inside. Above their heads were the suns and moons, and under their feet was the galaxy of stars. This strange world couldn't be caught even in their fantasy dreams. It looked so strange indeed. Shi Yin wasn't so sure if those things were all real. He urged his soul altar and focused on his ethereal extent and the star power Upanishad. Swish, swish, swish. The sunlight, moonlight in the sky, and the starlight streamers underground suddenly surged torrentially as if they were revived. Together, they flooded his body. The sunlight and moonlight columns above their heads moved, all shining on Shi Yan's body. Oh gosh, they are real. Shi Yin couldn't help but whine, his face disbelieving. It was not a fantasy world. The suns, moons, and stars in the imaginary world couldn't bring him any energy. His star power Upanishad couldn't work in a fantasy world. But it was real here. Is this place still the ancient continent? Cecilia covered her mouth, looking at the fierce shower of sunlight, moonlight, and starlight swarming Shi Yin. Suddenly, she saw an ethereal extent emerge over Shi Yan's head. She could even see the sun in that ethereal extent. Magically, it looked quite similar to the world they were at. Chapter 1177. It seems like a dreamland. Chapter 1177. It seems like a dreamland under her. Audrey, Shang Yingyu, Mo Fo, and the others stood by the clear lake and looked at the suns, moons, and scattered stars twinkling. All of a sudden, the lake rippled. It looked like some strange and evil energy was trying to do something to the lake to hide its peculiarity. The ripples on the lake's surface ceased. Everybody changed their visage in fear. There was no sun, moon, or star anymore. The lake now reflected the clouds, which were the exact objects floating above their heads. The strange reflections in the lake were gone. Shang Yingyu paled. She couldn't help but scream in panic. The other warriors looked at her. Shang Yingyu promptly told them what Cecilia had told her. She explained how Cecilia's teacher's husband had disappeared into that lake. The lake became normal, but her husband had gone forever. No one knew whether he was alive or not. And now, things on the lake had changed the same way it had done 10,000 years ago. It happened exactly as Cecilia had told them. Do you know what's going on? Wu Feng looked at Audrey. As you're from the Imperial Dark Clan, if you don't know it, I think no one will have a clue. Everybody was waiting for Audrey to talk. Audrey shook her head. I don't know. What should we do? Shang Yingyu was so worried as if she had a flame burning her. If what Cecilia said is true, are they gone in this lake and we won't be able to find them even 10,000 years later? Zhao Shan, Sha Zhao, and Mo Fo had serious faces. They were really worried about Shi Yin. They frowned and thought about what to do. No, I have to go there to see. Shang Yingyu gritted her teeth and then jumped into the lake. She moved around the bottom of the lake for a while. Audrey, Sha Zhao, and the others were baffled to watch Shang Yingyu moving into the lake. However, she didn't disappear. They could still see her swimming and raking through the lake bottom. They knew that the lake had resumed its normal state. Sha Zhao, Zhao Hai, Zhao Shan, and Mo Fo, and Wu Feng jumped into the lake, trying to see if they could find the secret of the lake to rescue Shi Yin and Cecilia. After a long time, they got out of the lake, including Shang Yingyu. This lake wasn't really big. After 2 hours, they had carefully checked the entire lake several times. Audrey had even used her soul consciousness to check. No one got anything. Shi Yin and Cecilia had disappeared like that. I can say that when we saw the lake having the suns and moons, it would be a magical space entrance at that time. Audrey contemplated and then spoke. People nodded in agreement. I mean, Shi Yin and Cecilia aren't in the lake. They've been transferred to another space or are confined somewhere. Or they didn't want to get back. And if they want to get back, it's not sure if they will reappear here. The ancient continent has so many marvelous secrets that I can't see through. Pausing for a while, Audrey sat down cross-legged and said indifferently, we'll wait for them for half a day. If they don't go out, when our time is up, we must leave without them. Zhao Shan and the others wore heavy faces. They knew Audrey's decision was correct, so they could only nod begrudgingly. I'm going to stay and wait for them, said Shang Yingyu coldly. Dash. The suns and moons were in the sky, while they had stars under their feet. It felt like they were walking in the void. Yin stood there and lifted his head to look at the sky and the columns of sunlight and moonlight descending from the sky like the rivers. Specks of starlight like flying fireflies entered the ethereal extent above his head. His ethereal extent was like an unreal world or a massive, greedy mouth that was swallowing the moonlight and sunlight and making them a part of it. Yin looked like he had been petrified. His god body was still, and it remained in his state to receive all of the light. His soul altar was emitting terrifying energy fluctuations, especially his devouring power Upanishad. The black hole was connected to the ethereal extent. Yan's ethereal extent was swallowing the lights of the suns, moons, and stars. It seemed like his ethereal extent had controlled everything. Cecilia looked at Yin and gasped in fright for a while. Then, she realized that Yin was standing still as if he didn't hear her calling. However, she knew that Yin was fine. She could see that he was taking in the marvelous benefits of this area, except for the fact that she didn't know where they were. Looking at Yin standing still for a long time, she didn't dare to disturb him. Cecilia hesitated for a while, and then moved around this strange place to explore. As she always remembered her teacher's words, she wanted to find the remains of her teacher's beloved one, which was possibly here for 10,000 years. She started to walk around. She continued walking. This place seemed to not have an end or any border. After a long time of moving, she figured out that she was pretty far from where Yin was standing. Unfortunately, she hadn't found anything yet. There was no river, mountain, sea, rock, or even a leaf of grass. Nothing she knew was found here. Not a single bone. Eventually, she felt hopeless, so she turned around and walked back to Yin. All of a sudden, she saw a mountain, which was very massive like a pillar that supported the whole sky and stood majestically. She stood still and watched the massive mountain. After a while, she was struck that she suddenly recognized that it was the center of desolate. She woke up all of a sudden. She found that she was standing in a vast forest by the foot of the holy mountain. She was just one step away from the mountain, the galaxy under her feet, and the wonder of 18 suns and moons above her head had disappeared. It looked like everything was a dream, a fantasy dream. It felt like she had entered the lake and got to this place when she got out. Cecilia stood in a daze and knitted her brows to think. She wanted to know the truth. She wanted to confirm that she wasn't just dreaming. Bewilderedly, she thought that she just had a hallucination. However, she thought it was more of a hallucination now than before. She stood with a dull, baffled face. "Oh, you've come here one step ahead." A surprised voice arose. Song Yun's succulent body appeared. He immediately retrieved his murderous aura and showed his innocent smile. Cecilia pulled herself together from her thoughts, her charming face bewildered. "I don't know how I got here. Just a moment ago, I was in a strange place where there were 9 suns and 9 moons. I could see the galaxy underneath my feet. Why am I here all of a sudden?" She furrowed her brows and said uncertainly, abruptly, she yelled, "Yin! Where's Yin? It's not a dreamland. It's not a dream." She didn't notice that Song Yun had a panic-stricken visage when she described the area to him. He looked at her, but his eyes weren't focused as he was mumbling something. Song Yun surely knew something. Chapter 1178. The Third Sky of Ethereal God Realm. Chapter 1178. The Third Sky of Ethereal God Realm _ Yin stood still in that strange world. The light from the 9 suns and 9 moons shone above his head while specks of starlight surged under his feet, all congregated into his ethereal extent. Yan's ethereal extent changed slowly. The ethereal extent seemed to reflect this area. Slowly, it had 9 suns, 9 moons, and specks of stars that looked marvelous and yet strange. Yin sank in the transformation of the star and space. He could touch the ripples of death and life power Upanishad in his soul altar, while his powers Upanishads in the soul altar were changing at a speed that he could never imagine. Gradually, his world dimmed when the light of the suns and moons above his head partially disappeared. They faded away like shadows. Suddenly, countless stars under his feet were all gone. This world seemed to be absorbed by his ethereal extent and was imprinted in his ethereal extent. Yin found himself standing in a place of white fog. He couldn't see or sense anything else. It seemed like he was lonely in this peculiar earth and heaven. After an unknown time, Yin woke up. He had a wonderful feeling as if he had conquered and embedded a whole world in his brain. As soon as he received this thought, he was shaken hard. The god power ancient tree in his body had doubled. His bones and veins were quenched by the sunlight, moonlight, and starlight. His space, star, death, and life intent domains had been upgraded. He had reached third sky of ethereal god realm. His soul was inexplicably sublimated. Using his soul consciousness to check his body, he found that his ethereal extent now was like a real world with the sun, moon, and stars. He could understand all of their mysteries. However, the real powers of the sun, moon, and stars in his ethereal extent were much weaker than he had imagined. Also, it wasn't as strong as the strange world he used to visit. Yin frowned and felt puzzled as if he had fallen into a thick mist. It's not easy for you to merge the truth of star and space power of that man into your ethereal extent. Your realm is too low. Of course, you can't take all the roots of the world that man had created based on Desolate that year. Desolate won't allow you to do that. Suddenly, Yin heard the ring spirit's voice in his soul. Yin was surprised. He asked, I don't quite understand. 100,000 years ago, that man was the top warrior of the God clan. His powers Upanishads were very similar to yours. He had fused the power of the star and space. The primary light power Upanishad of the God clan is now actually the source of the star power Upanishad. The moonlight, the sunlight, and the starlight are all light in nature. They are very similar to the light power Upanishad of the God clan. The ring spirit explained, your star power Upanishad comes from the three god sect of the Endless Sea. The three god sect is a branch of the Radiant God cult, and that Radiant God cult was founded by the warriors cultivating light power Upanishad of the God clan from the ancient time. Real experts of the God clan had visited Grace mainland pretty early. They spread out the light power Upanishad, which then derived into star power Upanishad. Although they aren't really similar, they have connections. The ring spirit continued. Listening to the ring spirit, Yin understood the matter. Many years ago, he received the star power Upanishad from the secret domain of the precursor named Ouyang. When he got to the Endless Sea, he learned that that precursor was the star god, one of the sages of the three god sect. Entering the divine great land from the Endless Sea, Yin knew the Radiant God cult. Then, he learned that the three gods of sun, moon, and star were the three guardians of the Radiant God cult. The star martial spirit was just one part of the Radiant God cult. This cult had the flaming sun martial spirit, the silver moon martial spirit, and the star martial spirit, which the warriors could practice with the flaming sun secret, the silver moon secret, and the star secret. Yun Hao, the cult master of the Radiant God cult, had fused the three powers into one and called it the Light Power Upanishad. After Yin had left Grace mainland and experienced many kinds of struggles, he had comprehended the truth of his power Upanishad, and he was able to gather the light of the sun, moon, and stars. However, he still called his power the Star Power Upanishad. However, Yun Hao had referred to his power as the Light Power Upanishad. Listening to the ring spirit, Yin understood that his power Upanishad now had been beyond the Light Power Upanishad of the God clan. Although it changed, it still had some connection. However, why did the top warrior of the God clan create a world in Desolate 100,000 years ago? He wanted to absorb the power of Desolate and use the star and space powers to create a whole new world. He wanted to refine Desolate. The ring spirit's voice trembled. Of course, he failed. He was really dominant at that time. Anyway, he is not the only one who got the same idea. White Tiger of the Heavenly Monster Tribe, an expert of the Immortal Demon Clan, and another expert of the Imperial Dark Tribe had the same thought. In that era, they represented the peak existences of the Great Four creatures. However, all failed. Why did they fail? Yin asked. Weren't they strong enough? Not strong enough? The ring spirit paused for a while and then continued. Even in comparison to warriors of this current era, they were the best of the best. Their intimidation could be compared to the chief of the God Clan, Imperial Dark Tribe, and Heavenly Monster Tribe. They were even stronger in some aspects, but they still failed. They weren't qualified to refine Desolate. Until now, no one had that qualification. No one could do that. What is Desolate after all? You will know later. How about the others who had failed to do that? White Tiger's remains had turned into a mountain range. The incipient extent of that god warrior had turned into the world you've just visited. Desolate has sealed it. After you decoded its essence, that world lost its existence. You've used it to break to third sky of ethereal god realm. It will be the primal form of your incipient extent. If you have enough power, you can create a whole new world too. The Imperial Dark Warrior had turned into the ice blue light cage covering Desolate, which you saw when you got through the atmosphere. The immortal demon expert had turned his god body into that holy mountain. Desolate controls him. 100,000 years ago, the four of them were the strongest experts who led the four great races. They were the essence crystallization of the four ancient continents. But still, they failed. What is the connection between the four ancient continents and Desolate? Why does Desolate open when the other four continents are at its worst exhausted condition? And when they recover their prosperity, Desolate will close. There should be some marvelous connection between them, right? Asked Shi Yin. You're not dumb. The five ancient continents used to be one entity. However, they were divided when they were born. It was like dividing a person into 5 pieces. The other 4 continents are its limbs, and the Desolate is the control center. Did you understand this example of mine? Shi Yin felt shocked. After years of wandering around this ancient continent, he soon had this thought. He guessed that the 4 ancient continent and Desolate had some connection. Shi Yin, Haig, Audrey, and Song Yun didn't have their soul consciousness bound on this ancient continent. They felt like they were at home, and they could gather earth and heaven energy easily. All of these were because of the origins of the ancient continents. However, a guess was just a guess. He couldn't solve the mystery if the ring spirit didn't tell him. Perhaps he would never understand this thoroughly. At the dawn of the universe, the 5 continents were one. They were divided after that. The 4 ancient continents had drifted apart like limbs of a body that scattered around the regions of the universe. They all had the incredible abilities. Desolate had intelligence and consciousness. Many people had told him this. He also had his cognition of it. If it was true, would the other 4 continents that departed from Desolate have the same intellect as a living being? As you can come up to this point, you didn't fail us. It's true that not only Desolate but also the other 4 continents, Grace Mainland, God-blessed Mainland, Ancient Demon Continent, and Ancient God Continent have incomplete intelligence and consciousness. Otherwise, there would be no Immortal Demon Clan, God Clan, Heavenly Monster Tribe, and Imperial Dark Tribe. The 4 great races were born in the 4 ancient continents respectively. They all wanted to prove that the creature that they had birthed was the most perfect, and they hoped that the creatures they had created could bear their soul memory. Unfortunately, they couldn't do that. Even though the great 4 creatures that they had birthed were really strong, they couldn't bear the continent's formidable memory. Thus, they had no choice but to try to use some other alternative, said the ring spirit. Making us fuse with their origin to create the co-soul and stay in our soul alta? A coexistence? The co-soul is some kind of continent's mediator? Shi Yin screamed in fright. Really smart, appraised the ring spirit. Shi Yin suddenly felt his hair rising on his nape. He couldn't help but release his co-soul. A magical flame spun as his thoughts changed. It was a part of his soul, and it had the same pulsation as his. It stores the will and memory of the ancient continent. You don't need to be tense. It can't affect you just yet. When the ancient continents are weakest, they can let out a part of its origin to fuse with your souls and become your co-souls. Currently, Grace Mainland, God-blessed Mainland, Ancient God Continent, and Ancient Demon Continent are like lamps running out of oil. Their power and intellect are in its weakest condition. How could they threaten you guys? No need to worry, comforted the ring spirit. Recently, The ancient continents have begun to revive and collect energy from outer space. When they become strong again, could we still be able to control ourselves? Asked Shi Yin seriously. As long as you're stronger than it, you can control it. Otherwise, the ring spirit didn't finish its sentence. Shi Yin grimaced. So it's not coincidental when a bunch of people like me, the ones who have fused with the origin, appear here, right? What are they seeking? What do they want from Desolate? Shi Yin pointed out the critical question. You'll know it shortly, the ring spirit replied, and then went silent. After that, Shi Yin found himself in the lake, soaking wet. Audrey's team had left the lake a long time ago. Only Shang Yingyu was waiting for him by the lake. Seeing him, her eyes brightened. He frowned and hissed, "Where's Cecilia? Did you see her? Didn't she accompany you?" Shang Yingyu was inexplicably bewildered. She hasn't gotten out of the lake yet? Shi Yin changed his visage slightly. Shang Yingyu shook her head. I've always been waiting here. I didn't see her. I thought that she went with you all the time. Damn it. Shi Yin cursed under his breath. He wanted to enter that wonderful world one more time. However, he couldn't find the entrance. He understood that the magical world generated by the incipient extent of the precursor from the God clan had disappeared after the essence of it was carved into his ethereal extent to boost him to third sky of ethereal God realm. Chapter 1179. Destination. Chapter 1179. Destination _ The lake was still crystal clear without a single algae leaf or fish. The only thing different from the time he had jumped into the lake was that Shi Yin didn't see any moon or sun. Shang Yingyu wore a white dress, her face elegant and quiet. However, there was a gleam of sadness on her face. Both Shang Yingyu and Shi Yin were worried about Cecilia going missing a lot. They didn't know where the woman had gone. As she was too worried, she didn't even notice that Shi Yin had reached a new realm. Now, he was at third sky of ethereal God realm. How long have you been here? Asked Shi Yin in a low-pitched voice. I didn't count the time. After Audrey's team left, I sat down to cultivate. I didn't notice the time, said Shang Yingyu dishearteningly. Shi Yin released a flow of soul consciousness and moved around Shang Yingyu. Then, he said, although your realm didn't advance, your God power is more sufficient and purer. The time you've been cultivating here isn't short, I suppose. Could be. Shang Yingyu wasn't so sure. Looking at the holy mountain that was far from them, Shi Yin frowned and pulled himself together. Let's go. Maybe we will meet her at the holy mountain. The strange, secret domain generated by the God expert's incipient extent had been imprinted in his ethereal extent. Since he didn't see Cecilia in there, it meant that Cecilia wasn't in that strange world with him. She had gotten out earlier. When she got out of that place, if she couldn't find Cecilia and Shi Yin, she would definitely head to their destination, the holy mountain. Shang Yingyu was still cold and not really talkative. She rarely voiced her opinion. So when Shi Yin made up his mind, she just followed him quietly. They swam across the lake and ran towards the holy mountain. Their way was strangely smooth. The perilous barriers and death traps in the center of the ancient continent were weakened unknowingly. They didn't bother Shi Yin and Shang Yingyu too much. Shang Yingyu and Shi Yin didn't understand why Desolate suddenly became so kind and showed a great deal of mercy. The majestic holy mountain standing firm in this world wasn't far from them anymore. They could reach it soon. Shi Yin and Shang Yingyu were like two departed spirits that were crossing a swamp where five-colored toxic gas hovered above their heads. Their feet didn't touch the swamp. All of a sudden, Shi Yin halted in the middle of the bog. He looked in a direction, his left hand grabbing something in the air. Swish! A starlight stream shot out from his fingertip like a water current, which had the power to detain the world. The starlight stream extended like a snake that swam through the toxic green gas in the swamp. Sizzle! 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 The poisonous smoke was struck and dispersed by his starlight, revealing two members of the God clan. They were Phelps's troopers. One was at second sky of ethereal God realm, and the other was at third sky of ethereal God realm. Their skin and eyes were now glowing in green. Apparently, they got poisoned by the miasma. Their soul energy fluctuated strangely and was unstable. A cold and evil aura emitted from their bodies. It seemed like the toxic smoke had entered their soul and changed their soul altars. Their god power wasn't reduced, but it increased somehow. When they looked at Shang Yingyu and Shi Yin with their monstrous, green eyes, Shang Yingyu felt a chill in her heart as if some monsters were eyeing her. It's some sort of mutant. Their bodies are eroded by the poisons, which have pushed them into bedevilment. They don't have human emotions anymore, muttered Shang Yingyu. Shi Yin didn't change his visage. His soul altar spun rapidly and changed his powers Upanishads. The ethereal extent emerged like a vast galaxy above his head with the radiant sun, the cold moon, and the twinkling stars. Its energy seemed everlasting, and it seemed like it could affect the real world out there. In Shi Yan's ethereal extent, the sun spun and turned into scorching fireballs as big as mountains. They covered the two members of the god clan with tremendous heat waves. Under the burning power of the suns, which looked so real, an entire swamp evaporated shortly. Even the grass and rocks burned and melted. The suns could destroy the real world. The two members of the god clan were poisoned. Under the scorching suns, water in their bodies evaporated. Their bodies then dried up like fish drying under the sunlight for years. The hot sunlight could burn any creature in the world. It dried their bodies and exploded their bones. Pieces of their flesh ignited and burned into ashes. Although they were experts at second and third sky of ethereal god realm, Shi Yan's ethereal extent could burn them easily. They couldn't even wiggle. It was like when the incipient god realm expert had the suppressing slaughter to them. It was a big gap between a realm they could never make up. The dazzling suns above their heads released terrible heat waves that expanded torrentially. Although the toxic gas was recovered, all the trees and rocks around the area burned and exploded. The ground didn't have a drop of water. This scene looked like doomsday. Shang Yingyu couldn't help but take out an icy soul-cold crystal and hug it. The icy cold energy from the icy soul-cold crystal had kept her safe from the heat. She now looked at Shi Yin in fear. How did you suddenly become so strong? Shang Yingyu was bewildered for a while. She couldn't help but scream. The energy and intimidation that Shi Yin was performing were much more terrifying than when he fought with Harson. He hadn't transformed into his immortal body, but he could simply kill two warriors of the god clan. This kind of deliberation had shocked Shang Yingyu. I've reached third sky of ethereal god realm. Shi Yin squinted, the acupuncture points in his entire body operating. Beams of essence chi from the dead flooded his acupuncture points. It was a process that naked eyes couldn't observe. The whirlpools there filtered and refined them at an amazing speed. Shi Yin chuckled. As he had reached third sky of ethereal god realm, his space, star, death, and life powers Upanishad had all grown. The strange world generated by the god clan's precursor's incipient extent had been carved in his ethereal extent, becoming the reflections there and bringing his ethereal extent a marvelous transformation. He had a feeling like he was able to hold the whole world in his hands. He was confident that if he fought Harson now, he wouldn't need to pay a bloody price to kill him. In this center of the ancient continent, he now had the confidence to face anybody directly. He even believed that he could win in the end. It was a new transformation of the soul and spirit caused by the marvelous increase of power. The energy fluctuation from your body is really intimidating. You can compare it to the warriors at second sky of incipient god realm. It seems like you're Haig's real rival. Shang Yingyu appraised him wholeheartedly. Dry, cracked soil and suns with tyrannical power that could burn down everything were around Shi Yin. Listening to Shang Yingyu's appraisal, he retrieved the ethereal extent into his soul altar and said, "We should move." Their way became even smoother. They reached the foot of the holy mountain. Shi Yin glanced at the corpses, which belonged to the god clan and the other races. They were possibly warriors from the other star areas led by Audrey. Those corpses weren't intact. Their faces were barely recognizable. Shi Yin and Shang Yingyu couldn't tell their identities. Nothing was lingering here. Apparently, they were dead for a long time. Shi Yin and Shang Yingyu stopped by and searched around the foot of the holy mountain. Shi Yin spoke to her. "It seems like we're the last ones who arrived here. You and I are late." Shang Yingyu nodded. It was really hard to tell the exact time in this place. Shi Yin didn't notice the time when he had cultivated in the strange land, and when Shang Yingyu used the icy soul cold crystal to improve her god power, she didn't keep track of time. Thus, they didn't know how long they had lagged behind the others. However, they saw the remains of the others by the foot of the holy mountain that possibly stayed there for a long time and belonged to the groups they knew. They knew that they had wasted a lot of them for their cultivation. Shi Yin lifted his head and looked at the holy mountain. The holy mountain was like the sharpest sword piercing into the high sky. They couldn't see the peak. The holy mountain looked like it was covered with fresh blood, as it had a dark red hue. At first glance, it gave people a mind constraint. The mountain had a lot of caves that stretched to its summit. They looked like the steps leading to the holy mountain. In the distance, each cave looked like a peculiar eye. Looking at the crimson mountain with caves that were like eyes scattering here and there, Shi Yin suddenly had a familiar feeling. It seemed like he had seen this image somewhere. He was so surprised. Shortly after, his eyes became odd. He couldn't help but take out the blood sword and carefully study it for the first time with the earnest attitude he had ever had. The broadsword was straight and blood-red. Closed eyes filled the body of this broadsword and made people's scalps numb. The crimson holy mountain, standing majestically with so many caves, looked amazingly similar to this broadsword. Absolutely, it wasn't coincidental. Taking a deep breath, Shi Yin rose the scarlet sword and tried to contact the ring spirit. Explain it to me. What's going on? The ring spirit didn't answer him. It seemed like it was asleep, or it just didn't want to talk to him. Shang Yingyu placed her jade-like hand on her mouth, her face aghast. She looked at the blood sword and then the holy mountain. She shivered and said to Shi Yin, "So similar." "I think so." Shi Yin turned his wrist. Flames danced along the body of the bloody sword in his hand. The closed eyes on the sword quietly opened. The handle of the sword where Shi Yin was holding now had a mark of the clusters of blood cloud that emitted a magical energy fluctuation. It's Shang Yingyu's bright eyes gazed at the mark of the blood cloud. She suddenly screamed as if she was encountering a ghost. "The thing you've inherited. Is it the bloodthirsty master's inheritance?" "Yes." "Oh boy." Chapter 1180. The Genesis Fruit. Chapter 1180. The Genesis Fruit _ Until now, Shang Yingyu and Cecilia had assumed that Shi Yin had inherited the Death Power Upanishad. They had never thought that he had received the Power Upanishad inheritance of the bloodthirsty master. They were two different concepts. The Death Inheritance was one of the 8 great inheritances. Xian He was one of the 8 chiefs of the bloodthirsty's cortege of 8. He couldn't represent the entire force. However, the inheritance from the master of the bloodthirsty force wasn't a joke. It was the peak of the powers Upanishads in this world. It also meant that Shi Yin could be the leader of the bloodthirsty force and would rule the entire cosmos. "How do you know that I've inherited the power of the bloodthirsty force's master?" Shi Yin arched his brows. Shang Yingyu looked at the blood sword he was holding and said faintly, "I heard some rumors from my father about that man. He has a bloody sword and a blood shield. They all have the blood mark." She pointed at the mark on the broadsword. Shi Yin understood it immediately. After pondering for a while, he asked, "How much you know about the master of the bloodthirsty force?" "Not much." Shang Yingyu considered her words and said carefully, "He's the most mysterious man in the universe. No one knows where he's from or what race he is. I heard my father say that he was mighty from the moment he made his debut. He knows many kinds of strange powers Upanishads. At that time, experts of the 4 great races wanted to kill them. However, many powerful existences of the 4 great races started to follow him after they had chased after him for a while. They then became his loyal subordinates." Shi Yin was frightened. Many warriors of the 4 great races had followed him? He didn't know that. "Yeah," Shang Yingyu confirmed. "As far as I know, the key members of the bloodthirsty force were mostly from the 4 great races. After those people had followed the bloodthirsty master, they had new powers Upanishads. Their realms and competences rocketed. Gradually, the bloodthirsty force grew fast. It became a brutal force of this universe. Eventually, the God Clan had joined hands with the other experts from the big star areas to wear out the bloodthirsty force. They had spent many years to destroy this force. As soon as the bloodthirsty master appeared, he was already formidable. Shi Yin frowned and felt baffled. No one could become strong without experiencing difficulties. According to Shang Yu, the bloodthirsty master was extremely strong right when he had come to this universe. Thus, he must have experienced something or was holding another identity. Anyway, no one knew this. The powers Upanishads of the bloodthirsty force all came from the master. Before he appeared, those powers Upanishad had never been found in this universe. When the experts of the four races had any one of them, they became so formidable. Those powers Upanishad had made them terrifying, infamous existences. This force really consisted of aliens. It was like a dark cloud shrouding the cosmos. No one could struggle out of their hands for so many years. Shang Yu explained to Shi Yin, while the man was listening to her quietly. Apparently, what Shang Yu knew about the bloodthirsty force came from her father, Shang Chun. Although Shang Chun was the fate traveler, he didn't know the profile of the bloodthirsty master. Thus, it would be a big secret. The ring spirit must know this. He tried to contact the ring spirit, but it was still silent. Shi Yin knew that it wasn't that the ring spirit didn't want to talk to him. It was in its last phase of combining parts of its memory. The memories that came from Xin Shan's bone had a large amount of information. It required time for the ring spirit to absorb all of them. Shi Yin understood it well. Shi Yin looked at the holy mountain, standing majestically in the cloud and the caves on its flanks. After turning to look at the bloody sword in his hand, Shi Yin pulled himself together. It wasn't the right time to figure it out. He decided to wait for the ring spirit to wake up and tell him the details. We should go to the cave. Calling for Shang Yu, Shi Yin jumped into the cave nearest to him. Nothing there prevented him from entering the cave directly. Shang Yu followed him closely. The cave was dark and deep with many rocky turns connecting each other. The world inside the caves was cold and gloomy. It gave people a strange mind pressure. Countless caves connected to countless passages and led to unknown areas. Shi Yin and Shang Yu walked through the passages. Seeing more turns, they somehow felt lost. Shi Yin paused and closed his eyes to sense instead of moving around aimlessly. The center of the holy mountain sent out a surging life energy that vibrated his soul. It was like the sea of life that was immense and unimaginable. It was even more robust than the oldest immemorial living beings. It was like the life magnetic field of hundreds or thousands of incipient God realm warriors combining. Shi Yin had a concussion. He seemed to see the unknown divine light shining on his sea of consciousness. Follow me. His eyes radiated brilliant divine light. Thinking for a while, he grabbed Shang Yu's small, soft hand. He could clearly feel her shivering. Shang Yu wiggled as she was shy. Eventually, she didn't resist anymore and let him clutch her hand and follow him. In the deep and dark cave, so many complex passages connected to each other and lead to different areas. The gloomy pressure in this place made people insecure. They felt like they were taking steps to death. Shi Yin couldn't see that Shang Yu was uncomfortable. In this dim-lit cave, he couldn't see Shang Yu blushing either. She was slightly shivering, though. Dash! The center of the holy mountain had a giant ancient tree that was firmly rooted filled each corner of this majestic mountain. This big tree was like the spirit bell that connected the underworld and the sea of stars. Its thick branches jutted into the rock passages. It looked like the imposing mountain was just a cover of this ancient tree that protected the tree. That was the meaning of its existence. The ancient tree had transparent, fulgent branches like real jade. A five-colored light like a rainbow was moving through the branches, radiating magnificently. If this ancient tree were resized billions of times, it would look like the essence chi ancient tree in the abdomen of any warrior. It seemed like the essence chi ancient tree, the source of energy in the warrior's body, had been created with this ancient tree as the model. Haig, Mia, and Phelps were in a corner of the holy mountain where the branches had reached through the rock passages. Song Yun was with Cecilia in another corner. Audrey, Jiao Shan, Jiao Hai, and the others walked together while Harson stayed alone in another area. All of them were about to reach the center of the mountain. As they were scattering in different directions, they didn't see each other, as if they had a net blinding them. From the mountain foot, they had encountered and killed some warriors before they got into the caves. They moved around the rock passages. Eventually, they were about to reach the important area inside the mountain. It was a vast wonderland inside the mountain where a giant ancient tree grew. They could see many guiding fruits hanging on the thick branches. 10,000 years later, those guiding fruits would be the keys to bring the warriors into the ancient continent. Those fruits were currently ripening fast. Inside a bush of branches and leaves covered by the rainbow halos, and in between the guiding fruits, a special fruit was hanging. It was just as big as a human fist, but it looked like a small figure of an ancient continent. It had clouds hovering on the surface, seas, deserts, and forest, and lots of beams of pure energy. With a close look, that fruit had everything an ancient continent had. It was ripening. As soon as Haig, Song-Yoon, and Audrey had entered the passage, their co-souls continually sent them vibes and matched with the energy of that fruit. They had followed the trace of energy to head to that fruit. The massive life magnetic field and the unimaginably tremendous vitality that Sure Yin had sensed came from this fruit. It was like the combination of the souls of thousands of incipient God realm experts to release such a marvelous life energy fluctuation. However, it was just a fruit, a very special fruit. Time flew fast. When Sure Yin and Shang-Ying were heading to the Wonderland inside the mountain, Song-Yoon, Haig, and Audrey were scattered and waiting in different corners. After an unknown time, Haig, Audrey, and Song-Yoon had moved almost at the same time and quickly headed to that strange land inside the mountain. Shadows started to emerge and gathered in the area of thick mist. The ancient tree in that wonderland was so big that its branches and leaves towered over everything else. Rainbow lights circulated around the crystal-like branches. Altogether, they made people feel like they were in the best dreamy land. When Haig, Audrey, and Song-Yoon appeared in this area, they all looked at the same thing. They were all looking at the fruit that looked like a whole planet. They didn't care about the guiding fruits. Apparently, those fruits weren't their target. Genesis fruit, Song-Yoon, Haig, and Audrey muttered. Their eyes became hot, and their faces were resolute as if they had to get that thing at any cost. Harson hid alone in the dark. He glumly watched them and said nothing, like a ghost. No one knew what he had in his mind. Sure Yin and Shang-Ying were still moving to this area. The fruit they called the Genesis fruit was taking the rainbow light inside the crystal branches to grow. Currently, it had many arches of rainbows above the surface. It looked like massive structures of this fruit were getting the last speck of material to be completed. And then, it would be time for the birth of a new continent. Oh! Haig and Audrey studied Song-Yoon, their faces astounded. Song-Yoon smiled and said curtly, "You guys want the Genesis fruit. I do too." Audrey's face turned cold. "You are a member of the Heavenly Monster Tribe?" Song-Yoon smiled again. He nodded and bowed modestly. "I'm from the White Tiger branch." Audrey was shocked. She became stern. When she looked at Song-Yoon again, she became more cautious. The Imperial Dark Tribe had fought the Heavenly Monster Tribe for so many years. Audrey knew the Heavenly Monster Tribe well. The White Tiger branch was the best fighter of the Heavenly Monster Tribe. They had made the Imperial Dark Tribe pay a bloody price that year. Audrey didn't dare to look down on this branch's strength. "Still, someone hasn't come." Haig was calm and indifferent. "Where's the guy from the Immortal Demon Clan?" Audrey and Song-Yoon put on dark faces. Chapter 1181. The World Tree. Chapter 1181. The World Tree _ When Sure Yin got into the lake and Shang-Ying cultivated outside, it took a long time. During this time, Song-Yoon and Cecilia were the first warriors to enter the Holy Mountain. Haig and Audrey took their team and crossed a lot of barriers and death traps to collect many jades, crystals, and spirit herbs that were at original incipient grade. Eventually, they came to the foot of the mountain. Harson of the Charteris family had experienced the lowest tide of a human's life. He had to bear different kinds of mind torments. He collapsed, endured, harmed himself, and finally sobered. No one knew what had happened to him after Shi Yin had left. But he became more fearsome. Song Yun, Haig, Audrey, and Harson had gathered at the Holy Mountain from 4 different directions. They had collected many original incipient grade materials along their way, and perhaps they had created a connection with Desolate somehow. What they had encountered, only they could know. Nobody else could ever understand. They all walked to the Holy Mountain and entered the cave to reach the World Tree, the nucleus of the ancient continent. In legends, a tree of earth and heaven grew in the middle of the universe. It was called the World Tree. It was the critical point of earth and heaven energy that connected currents of energy in the universe. The Essence Chi ancient tree in the body of the warriors was the miniature version of the World Tree when it was created using this model. The World Tree was a perfect hub that gathered, connected earth and heaven energy, and communicated the 8 poles of the universe. The God Power Tree in the creature's body had the essence and secret of the World Tree. It could congregate energy from earth and heaven. The veins in a warrior's body were the branches of the ancient tree in their abdomen. Their veins filtered, refined, and compressed the energy, creating the God Power and Essence Chi. The God Power and Essence Chi watered the God Power Tree, or the Essence Chi ancient tree, and filled the branches with energy. When each branch of the tree was full of pure energy, the warrior would break into another realm. Their tree would grow more. Rumors said that if the World Tree broke or shattered, the energy of this universe would become chaotic. Disasters would occur to earth and heaven. The God Power Tree in the warriors' bodies would break altogether. However, creatures in this world didn't know much about the World Tree. Most of them had little knowledge about things in this cosmos. Only the immortal demon clan, the God clan, the imperial dark tribe, and the heavenly monster tribe had a better and clearer knowledge of the World Tree. Only they knew that the World Tree was the nucleus of Desolate. Considering Desolate a unique living form, the roots of the World Tree pierced into the ground of Desolate while its top touched the sky. Its countless branches were the veins of Desolate, and the World Tree was the God Power Tree of Desolate. After 10,000 years, the World Tree bore a Genesis fruit. This kind of fruit was condensed by the nucleus of the World Tree. To Song Yun, Haig, Audrey, and Shi Yin, the warriors that had fused with the origin, the Genesis fruit could be the nucleus of their co-soul. If anyone of Song Yun, Haig, Audrey, and Shi Yin could absorb the Genesis fruit into their co-soul, the ancient continent that connected to them could be filled with energy rapidly. It could gather the remnant energy in outer space 100 times faster. The creatures of that ancient continent would be revived after being given the new, powerful competence. In the river of time in this vast universe, the God Clan, Immortal Demon Clan, Heavenly Monster Tribe, and Imperial Dark Tribe had taken turns to become powerful. In one era, only one of them could become the Overlord. In fact, it had a close relationship with the Genesis fruit. The reason why the God Clan could subdue and destroy the bloodthirsty force 10,000 years ago was that the chief of the God Clan, who had also fused with the origin of ancient God continent, had taken the Genesis fruit in Desolate. He had revived ancient God continent and boosted all the members of the God Clan. At that time, the 3 ancient continents that were the cradles of the Heavenly Monster Tribe, the Imperial Dark Tribe, and the Immortal Demon Clan were like lamps running out of oil. Without the external force to refill them once again, they could still recover, but it took a really long time. The Genesis fruit could change all of these. The core members of the 4 races and the elderly precursors all knew about the Genesis fruit, which was born every 10,000 years in Desolate. This fruit could affect the position of the 4 races in the next 10,000 years in this universe. They had a saying like this: any race that could have the Genesis fruit could rule the cosmos for 10,000 years. It was really crucial. Today, after 10,000 years, a new Genesis fruit was born. The 4 ancient continents were now exhausted. They were all in need of this fruit to supply the vitality and the new boost for the entire race. If Haig got the Genesis fruit, the God Clan would still be the overlords of this universe. Giving them 10,000 more years would allow them to seize the entire cosmos in their hands. They could even hunt the Heavenly Monster Tribe, Imperial Dark Tribe, and Immortal Demon Clan down to the last member. If the Heavenly Monster Tribe, Imperial Dark Tribe, and Immortal Demon Clan wanted to rise again, they had to suppress the God Clan. To do that and become the next ruler of the universe, they had to take the Genesis fruit. Song Yun, Haig, and Audrey gazed at the Genesis fruit and accumulated energy to prepare for a battle to take the fruit. Mia, Phelps, and 11 warriors of the God Clan stood by Haig and looked at Zhao Hai, Zhao Shan, and Mo Fo, and Wu Feng coldly. Quietly, they had determined their opponents. They had a bloody battle by the foot of the holy mountain. Both sides had to bear a significant loss and leave some corpses back there. The coming battle was crucial to the future of their entire clans. Everybody had to be cautious to gain the chance for their parties. Song Yun of the Heavenly Monster Tribe, Audrey of the Imperial Dark Tribe, and Haig of the God Clan was here. They were waiting for the moment for the Genesis fruit to ripen. Still, there was one of the 4 races that hadn't arrived yet. Audrey knew that Shi Yin had encountered something really bad. From Cecilia, Song Yun understood that Shi Yin might have had some magical encounter. He had paid attention, but as the Genesis fruit was almost ripe, he became restless. As his heavenly monster identity was exposed, the relationship between him and Audrey shattered. When the battle happened, Audrey was going to make him her primary target. Song Yun understood that when facing the Heavenly Monster Tribe, the God Clan and Imperial Dark Tribe were going to join hands despite their past resentment. This had happened before. Among the 4 great races, God Clan and Imperial Dark Tribe used to have a close relationship for a long time. When the Imperial Dark Tribe and the Heavenly Monster Tribe had a bloody war, God Clan would help the Imperial Dark Tribe to defeat the Heavenly Monster Tribe. From that time, the Heavenly Monster Tribe had learned from experience. They discreetly created an alliance with the haughty Immortal Demon Clan. They had cooperated with the race that had never shaken hands with anyone else. During the racial war, the Imperial Dark Tribe had depended on the God Clan's power, and the God Clan had counted on them to attack the Immortal Demon Clan. They all had benefited from this alliance. On the other hand, the Heavenly Monster Tribe and the Immortal Demon Clan, the other 2 of the 4 great races, one didn't know how to plot or plan a conspiracy, while the other was too arrogant to join hands with anybody to resist their enemies. That was why they were often defeated. After so many years, the Heavenly Monster Tribe had finally recognized that they needed allies. Before Song Yun came here, he had talked to a precursor of the Immortal Demon Clan. He knew Shi Yan's existence. Right from the beginning, he had treated Shi Yin as his best ally. However, right in the most critical time, his ally disappeared mysteriously. As he didn't know whether Shi Yin could make it or not, Song Yun became restlessly worried. The Heavenly Monster Tribe should be eliminated first. Haig gave a faint smile and looked at Audrey. Our 2 clans used to cooperate. We have a secret treaty. I thought you know about that, right? Audrey nodded, her cold eyes gazing at Song Yun as she said, I know the value of that treaty. The Heavenly Monster Tribe is always our clan's mortal enemy. I know what to do. She pointed her spear at Song Yun. The Heavenly Monster Tribe and the Imperial Dark Tribe had a deep grudge. When she knew Song Yun's real identity, she had made up her mind not to spare his life. If it were Shi Yin instead of Song Yun, it would be much better, Audrey thought. The Imperial Dark Tribe and the Immortal Demon Clan didn't have anything in relation. Although the Immortal Demon Clan was the archenemy of the God Clan and the Imperial Dark Tribe used to help the God Clan to deal with the Immortal Demon Clan, it was a very long time ago. In this era, the God Clan was so strong. Although Haig was excellent, if she joined hands with Shi Yin, it wouldn't be a big burden. Anyway, ever since she knew that Shi Yin was from the Immortal Demon Clan, she thought of this idea. It was too bad Shi Yin didn't come. Both Audrey and Song Yun had to sigh because of this. On the mountain where mist hovered above a wonderland grew a massive tree that had towered everything else. The guiding fruits hanging in the tree branches started to ripen. Haig and Audrey suddenly aimed at Song Yun. They had established an agreement shortly. They wanted to kill Song Yun first. This incident was beyond people's estimation. Didn't we want to destroy the God Clan? Cecilia walked to Sha Zhao, Zhao Hai, and Wu Feng. Seeing Audrey look at Song Yun with her cold face, she frowned and hissed. Song Yun isn't an ordinary individual. He's the mortal enemy of our Imperial Dark Tribe. I have to kill him first to ease my mind, said Audrey coldly. I won't let you guys join this. Don't worry. Don't rush. After I destroy Songyun, I will do what I've promised you. Let's see the situation first. Haig turned around to order Mia and Phelps. The members of the God Clan stepped back, waiting in silence with solemn faces. Rattle, rattle. Some crispy noises arose when a bony figure appeared not far from Songyun. Harson. Harson. Haig and Audrey hissed. The members of the God Clan and Cecilia's team also looked at the warrior who had just appeared with an odd face. Even Songyun, Audrey, and Haig couldn't find where Harson had been hiding. In fact, after Harson had fought Shi Yin in the desert, he had gone missing. Mia, Phelps, and the warriors of the God Clan had tried to search for him. They got nothing. They thought that Harson was dead. However, right at the critical point of time, Harson reappeared strangely. The dangerous aura emitted from him was much denser than before. It's good that you came here in time. It seems that the mighty heaven wants to help our clan by giving us another 10,000 years of wealth and prosperity. Haig calmed down and smiled. Although he didn't like Harson, he knew Harson was really strong. Seeing Harson at this moment, he felt relieved and happy. He believed that with Harson here, he could take the Genesis fruit, which would give the God Clan another 10,000 years of wealth. He didn't see Harson's abnormality. Chapter 1182, Crazy Harson. Chapter 1182, Crazy Harson, _ Harson's sudden appearance had caught people's attention. Harson's motive would determine the trend of the coming battle. The God Warriors cheered up. Even Haig, Phelps, and Mia could ease their minds now. As they all knew how tremendous Harson was, they knew that Harson was strong enough to deal with Audrey or Songyun. With Harson's participation, the God Clan would definitely have the chance to harvest the Genesis fruit, which would make them strong for the next 10,000 years. However, Haig didn't see Harson's strange bearings. After Harson appeared, he didn't look at Audrey or Songyun. His eyes were glued to Haig. Harson's eyes became dark as if the white part of his eyes slowly turned black. Looking at him at this moment, everybody thought that they were watching something incredibly terrible. Harson. Mia called, her face tense and restless. What's wrong with you? She was the first person to notice Harson's abnormality. Many years ago in the death trap of the God Clan, Mia had seen this appearance of Harson. His eyes were completely dark and they had no scara. Mia thought that Harson was dead and a demogorgon had possessed him. However, right after that moment, Harson had transformed from a wimpy kid to a bloodthirsty madman. He had killed everybody else except Mia. Harson could hardly recover later. But then, he had turned into a completely different person that Mia couldn't recognize. After so many years, seeing Harson like that one more time, Mia felt her hair rising on the back of her head. And only Mia could see Harson's abnormality. Haig, Phelps, Audrey, and Songyun didn't see anything strange. They just frowned, looking at Harson and waiting for his next move. Watch Harson. Everybody be aware of him. Mia shouted hoarsely all of a sudden. Haig's pupils shrank. Audrey and Songyun changed their faces in fear. A terrifyingly evil energy surged like a rising tide. It grumblingly burst out like an erupting volcano from Harson's body. Rumble, rumble. 18 viscous blood-like columns shot up to the air from his body. Each of them was as big as a towering tree that surrounded Harson. A kind of energy that could distort the whole world diffused from Harson and affected the entire space inside the mountain. White bone blood refining ghost grave. Haig, Mia, and the others couldn't help but shout. The group of the God Clan's warriors was scared and perplexed. Harson, what the heck are you doing? Haig thundered as he was outraged. I know you don't like me, but it's related to our entire clan. Even if you hate me more, just wait until we eliminate the opponents. We will put an end to our story. What are you going to do now? Attracting the geniuses of the significant star areas to the ancient continent, so the God Clan could kill them at once, was the plan that Haig had proposed. It was an important event to prove his leadership to the elders of the God Clan. As long as his plan was successful, He could be sure about his chief position of the God Clan in the near future. For this purpose, Haig had been calmly planning everything. He could endure Harson's bad behaviors, and he could even take a step back when he saw Harson in the ancient continent. All was for his big goal. However, as Harson was using the white bone blood refining ghost grave at this moment, he was definitely out of his mind. This evil formation was going to collapse people's minds and make them kill each other. Even the god warriors would kill each other because of this evil formation. Once it was activated, they couldn't stop. Haig didn't know why Harson had to do that. Although Harson was insane and bloodthirsty, it was just to deal with others. He had never attacked warriors from the same clan. However, today Harson looked utterly crazy. It seemed like he had lost his mind completely, so he wasn't going to even spare his own people. But the thing that made them more dumbstruck was that Harson didn't have any subordinate here with him, and he still could use the white bone blood refining ghost grave. Moreover, his power seemed to increase tremendously. All the warriors of the God Clan became restlessly insecure. They all knew how dangerous the evil formation of the Charteris family was. They knew that this family was the bloody lance of the God Clan who had destroyed the enemies of the God Clan everywhere. Today, Harson used his most dangerous evil formation to drag them to death. This thought had struck them out of their wits. After Harson had emerged, he said nothing but directly used the white bone blood refining ghost grave. Instantaneously, the tombstone appeared above his head and activated the evil formation. Everybody felt their souls sinking deep into that bloody gravestone, and no matter how hard they wiggled, they couldn't get out. Song-Yoon, Haig, and Audrey weren't exceptions. Feeling the strange commotion of their soul altars, they couldn't hide their great fear. It wasn't the first time that they were trapped in this evil formation. Song-Yoon had experienced it before. Audrey had also sunk in it when she neglected Shiryan's advice and tried to get through the barrier. At that time, all of Harson's troopers were still alive and strong. However, the power of their formation at that time wasn't as strong as what he had now. What did it mean? It meant that after Harson had fought Shiryan in the desert, his power had increased furthermore. He was incredibly strong. Song-Yoon and Audrey discolored in fright. They thought that this madman Harson was much tougher than Haig. His insanity and unpredictable movement were unidentified factors. Harson sat cross-legged under the bloody stone grave. The towering blood columns stood by him, released viscous blood light, and created the blood sea where there was a lot of sinister energy that could twist minds, wear out people's wills, and erode their souls. The other warriors began to lose their minds. Mo Fo and Wu Feng were panic-stricken. Gradually, they started to show their fangs. Mia, Phelps, and the warriors of the God Clan couldn't escape this trap. Shortly after, their eyes showed their madness. They started to attack the people standing next to them. They didn't recognize whether they were their clansmen or the best buddies. Inside the formation, Song-Yoon, Haig, and Audrey, the warriors with the origin, shouldn't have been affected. However, it was unknown why their soul altars, souls, and even god powers became restless while they were shrouded in the blood sea. Although they were still sane, Harson's world had affected them. Their powers were restrained. They couldn't urge or use any ability. Song-Yoon, Haig, and Audrey discolored in fright when they recognized the situation. The warriors who had fused with the origin could swagger in this world, as their powers Upanishads weren't often bound to natural principles. They had proven this in the ancient continent. However, Harson's evil formation had affected them right now and retrained their abilities and energy. What was going on? They all grimaced and tried to figure out how Harson did it. Desolate. It's the special magnetic field of Desolate. Oh gosh, Harson has gotten the approval of Desolate. Song-Yoon shouted. His clothes were torn and then turned into ashes when he transformed into a massive, majestic white tiger. His murderous, imposing aura diffused from his body. This tiger had the imperial mark of the heavenly monster tribe with an astonishing dignity. Song-Yoon had transformed into his true form. Song-Yoon's words had made Audrey and Haig baffled before waking them up. Only Desolate's power could affect them. If Harson could do that, he must have received Desolate's approval or something magical. That was how he could use the evil formation to bind them. Haig roared and turned into his undying god bod with fish-scale armor and spikes all over his body. Different from Song Yun's and Haig's transformation, Audrey's soul altar spun and her graceful body faded out. Amazingly, she had become something magically unreal. She looked like a departed spirit or a reflection, which didn't seem tangible. Making the god body become nothingness was a strange but marvelous ability that only the purest Imperial Dark Warriors could do. After their bodies had turned into oblivion, physical attacks couldn't touch them. Only soul attacks could affect them. And when speaking about soul attacks, the Imperial Dark Tribe didn't have a rival in this vast universe. The body of nothingness was an exclusive power of the Imperial Dark Tribe. It was as strong as the undying god body, the immortal demon body, and the true form of the heavenly monster tribe. After they realized that Harson was recognized by Desolate and that he had received something good from Desolate, Song Yun, Haig, and Audrey had become stern. They all transformed to prepare their best to counter. At the same time, Mia, Phelps, Mo Fo, Wu Feng, Zhao Shan, Zhao Hai, and the others were attacking each other unconsciously. Their souls had fallen into the hands of the enemy. While the other experts of different star areas were surrounding the world tree, Harson interfered and sank them into madness. Right now, Shang Yingyu and Shi Yin were still dashing through the rock passage. Shi Yin had followed the magical life magnetic field to reach the world tree. He wanted to know what was going on there. The ring spirit of the blood vein ring on his finger had sent him a simple advice. The world tree bore the Genesis fruit. Take it and absorb it into your co-soul. However, the ring spirit didn't describe the world tree or the Genesis fruit. It just told him what to do and what his goal was. It didn't tell him what benefits his goal could bring him. Afterward, Shi Yin had tried to contact the ring spirit, but he got nothing in the end. He immediately noticed that it was in its critical time of fusing memories. It wasn't easy for the ring spirit to spare him a second and give him new instructions. He believed that the ring spirit wouldn't harm him, so he had his new target. Get the Genesis fruit and fuse it with the co-soul. He took Shang Yingyu and moved wildly through the rock passages. While his soul felt that tremendous life energy fluctuation, the god power in his body surged like a flooding current. Eventually, Shi Yin and Shang Yingyu had almost reached the world inside the mountain where the world tree grew. He suddenly stopped and said sternly, "It doesn't feel right. You should stay here. Don't go with me." "What? Why?" Shang Yingyu frowned. "White bone blood refining ghost grave. It's Harson's white bone blood refining ghost grave. It is much stronger than the time we'd encountered him." Taking a deep breath, Shi Yin hissed, "Once you get there, your soul will collapse. You will become a wild beast that only knows how to kill until you die." Shang Yingyu's soft body shivered. She halted and remembered the situation that they had experienced. She felt a chill deep in her heart. "You should be careful," she advised. "Don't worry." Shi Yin darkened his face and entered the thick blood mist. Chapter 1183. I'm helping you. Chapter 1183. I'm helping you. A gory gravestone was floating in the middle of a viscous blood sea. Harson was sitting neatly under that gravestone. Surrounding Harson were Haig, Audrey, and Song Yun. However, they weren't in good condition. Although they had transformed, their auras and energy were disordered. Their spirit, soul, and chi seemed to be bound and their souls were shivering continuously. However, at least they were still sane and didn't fall into a slaughtering madness. They were still struggling to resist the evil energy invading their minds. Phelps, Mia, Cecilia, Wu Feng, and the others had a worse situation. Because they didn't have the origin, they had been dragged into insanity. Their eyes were garnet like they were starving beasts that saw fresh, warm meat. No one could control themselves anymore. Seeing Cecilia, Shi Yin relaxed his tense nerves, but right after that, his face darkened. It was the same white bone blood refining ghost grave, but Shi Yin was affected. He was the only one that the white bone blood refining ghost grave couldn't control. Shi Yin had studied each of Xian Shan's bones. He understood the evil formation and its working principles. At the same time, Shi Yan's blood soul sea had the same effects as this formation. That was why the blood sea couldn't affect him. He calmly walked to the center of the formation and approached Harson. "What do you want?" "I'm helping you." Harson hadn't said a word since he had arrived in this area. He talked for the first time after he came here. His voice was low and pitiful, like he was an evil spirit crying. Hearing him, people felt so uncomfortable that they had goosebumps. "Helping me?" Shi Yan was astounded. "Right. I'm helping you eliminate your opponents. I will help you kill all of them. In Desolate, I will help you kill all the creatures present here. After we leave this place, I'll help you kill any race or clan and clean this entire world. You tell me, am I helping you?" Harson chuckled evilly. "I don't know what you're talking about." Shi Yan knitted his brows tightly. "It seems like you haven't understood it. Because you're the heir of the bloodthirsty master, you'll get to know what kind of responsibilities you need to shoulder later. Don't worry." Harson laughed evilly and said, "First, we should kill all the people here. Kill them all and leave no one. It's the responsibility you should take. I've helped you start it. You should end it now." "End it?" "Yes, kill all the people here, including you. If you want, you can do that. Of course, I'm not going to let you do that easily." Shi Yan quieted down. Harson looked at him, his eyes showing many deep meanings. He didn't talk, as if he was waiting for Shi Yan to consider. After a long time, Shi Yan answered, "I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what the successor of the bloodthirsty master has to shoulder. But I can tell you one thing. I'm Shi Yan. I'm not controlled by anyone or bound to anything. I will do what I want to do. If I don't want to do something, I don't care about anybody's responsibility." Then, he walked past Harson, approaching Cecilia, who looked disheveled, and gathered his god power to grab her wrist. The starlight chain tied Cecilia's graceful body and brought her out of the white bone blood refining ghost grave. It brought her to Shang Yingyu standing outside. Shang Yingyu immediately took out the icy soul-cold crystal and used its icy power to control wild Cecilia. Shang Yingyu had to do that to prevent Cecilia from harming her. While Cecilia was frozen, her extreme metal state ceased. She slowly recovered. "Oh, you know how to take care of the glamour. Anyway, you're a little conservative, though." Harson grinned and shook his head. "It seems like I can't count on you. Your mind isn't strong enough. You can't complete the mission. I'll help you." "Harson, you're a member of the God Clan. If you dare to act rashly, our clan will never spare your life," Haig said coldly. "Ha ha ha, I'm now not a god warrior anymore." Harson laughed and pounded his chest, crying, "Today, my body has the essence of Xian Shan's bones. Xian Shan was an immortal demon. What am I now?" "Crossbreed," Haig shouted. Harson laughed crazily. The floating gory gravestone above his head created a world of blood and shrouded Haig directly. "Haig, you aren't eligible to be the future leader of the God Clan. You're too calm and sane. There are many things that keep you behind when you want to do something. You mind your superior's opinions, and you want admiration from your subordinates. You have too many restraints. Your heart is tied. At most, you can only keep the God Clan at its current power. You will never bring it a new future." Harson suddenly became so cold, and he pressed each of his words. "Only I can bring the God Clan a new future. As long as I kill you, your co-soul with the origin of the ancient God continent will choose its new master. I'll become its new master." "You think you can kill me?" Looking at the bloody tombstone approach him, Haig's eyes turned bright white like a burning white flame. A brilliant white flame burst out from his entire body. The scale armor covering him turned silver white, which was very frightening. Billions of light beams shot out from his glabella. His light power Upanishad urged the power of 5 elements in earth and heaven to create the light divine boat of the God Clan. Instantly, all the things binding him were cut off. Haig could move freely again. Bright white flames burst out from his body as he was gathering earth and heaven energy. The energy fluctuating from him was beyond the power of anyone present here. "I'm the leader of our clan, designated by the elders from the Book of Gods. From the day I was born, my life has resonated with ancient God continent. I'm the one who ancient god continent has chosen. Haig emerged above the blood sea and looked down at Harson and the others. He continued arrogantly, even when you were in your peak condition, the Charteris family didn't dare to let you fight with me. Do you know why? Because they know you will never defeat me. Although the burning purgatory power Upanishad of your family can boost your power by burning the soul and body, it's too bad. You still need a lot more to deal with me. Thump, 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 thump. Haig's heart beat frantically. Every time his heart beat, ancient god continent from far away also twitched. Every expert of the god clan in ancient god continent could recognize the vibes from the ground like a heartbeat. The earth cracked in some area as if an earthquake was about to happen. However, the experts of the god clan staying in the shrines built in ancient god continent, who had their names written in the book of gods, all had calm faces when they felt the tremors. They even smiled happily. If he could draw the consonants of the ancient continent, Haig's compatibility with the heaven flame origin had become almost perfect. They knew how powerful Haig could be in this state. Those extreme, famous experts of this universe knew how formidable Haig was currently. They understood that even if they came to fight Haig themselves, they could reluctantly subdue him but not kill him. It was because Haig had fused with the ancient continent completely, and because the ancient continent was never going to be destroyed. In the God Clan's history, not many people could reach this step in the river of time. If he could fuse and be one with the ancient continent, he could become immortal. He would never die, and he could exist together with the ancient continent forever. They praised Haig as a rare prodigy. Compared to another warrior who had fused with ancient god continent, his compatibility with the flaming origin was much more thorough. That warrior had taken the Genesis fruit and brought 10,000 years of prosperity to the God Clan. He had helped Go Clan subdue the bloodthirsty force. However, although that warrior had high realm and profound power, he had to die because he couldn't fuse completely with the ancient continent. Haig could surpass that warrior to achieve the goal he had had to spend his entire life. If Haig could wholly fuse with the ancient continent, he would never die. It meant that the God Clan would have eternal prosperity. Every time Haig's heart beat, the energy in his god body became a bit stronger. It seemed like this process would never end. Yin didn't know where Haig's power came from, but Audrey and Songyun knew it. Their faces grimaced as they were scared. Drawing the energy of the ancient continent and transferring it to his body to counter the enemy were the signs of a perfect state of fusion with the flaming origin. It was a miracle. If Haig got the Genesis fruit, which would help the ancient god continent gather the energy from outer space rapidly, he could continuously draw the energy of the ancient continent to become the most intimidating existence in this vast universe. Even the incipient god realm experts wouldn't be able to resist him. No one would be able to resist him. Everybody knew that Haig was excellent, and that he was the pride of the God Clan. However, they knew how formidable he was only when they fought him. Compared to him, many geniuses in the vast universe were like the light of a firefly under the radiant sunlight that wasn't worth mentioning. Yin, Songyun, and Audrey wore stern faces. They were astonished by Haig's performance. If Yin hadn't reached third sky of ethereal god realm and his soul, spirit, and chi wasn't in its best condition, he would be subdued by Haig's intimidation. Songyun and Audrey were affected. I know your fusion has reached this phase. If it were 1,000 years ago or later, I'm sure I wouldn't be your opponent, Harson said distantly. Unfortunately, it's the time when the ancient continent is at its weakest. Although your fusion is deep enough, how much energy could you borrow from the continent? Harson suddenly burst out laughing wildly. Especially since it's desolate. It's not anywhere else in this cosmos. In this place, I can kill you. His god body dried up quickly and made him look like a terribly evil man who had a body made of only bones. He didn't have a bit of flesh but a skin bag covering his skeleton. This image of Harson was so fearsome. The skeleton of his body sounded of crack. His 10 fingers, which were like dry claws, made 3 magical hand seals. A gory claw emerged from under the blood sea, which had strange, evil drawings on the joints and knuckles. It brought together the power and the will that could destroy any creature. The claw was like a flower that swallowed Haig and his light divine boat. It dragged him into a deep place of the blood sea. Chapter 1184. The Cold Eye of a Bystander. Chapter 1184. The Cold Eye of a Bystander _ Haig and his light divine boat were dragged to a deep place in the blood sea. They disappeared altogether with the bone claw. Harson was still floating under the bloody tombstone. His eyes were jet black and were strangely and coldly scanning people in the blood sea. Song-Yoon and Audrey were trying their best to resist the evil energy that was invading their souls. Song-Yoon had transformed into the white tiger and was lying on the ground. His massive body quivered as if he was gathering energy. Audrey's slim body had turned into nothing. Like a departed spirit, she was floating and bobbing in the blood sea, which looked so unreal. In this form, no physical attack could touch Audrey. The abilities of Power Upanishad couldn't hurt her either. Unfortunately, this blood sea had the power to erode the soul. It could seep into her soul altar and attack her soul. Anyway, Audrey had mastered the soul class Power Upanishad. As she was congregating her power to resist the evil mind invasion, her eyes were always clear and bright. She didn't have any puzzled gleam. She seemed to finally stabilize her condition. In the blood sea, Phelps, Mia, and the other warriors of the God Clan were killing each other. Mo Fo, Wu Feng, Jiao Shan, and Sha Zhao had lost their minds completely. They couldn't tell if the others were their enemies or friends, so they just kept fighting until death. People started to die in this strange land where the thick mist was hovering. Every time a warrior died, Shi Yin was startled as he gathered the essence chi from them. Shi Yin looked at Harson, his face stern. He had quietly mobilized his power and was ready to counter any new incident. Harson's black eyes still gazed at a place deep in the blood sea. He didn't pay attention to Audrey or Song-Yoon. His primary target was Haig. Haig had sunk into the blood sea, but the vitality from him was still robust. Apparently, Haig was still alive, and he was still gathering more power. Thump, thump, thump. Everybody could hear his heart beating vigorously. After every beat, Haig could draw energy from the ancient continent to strengthen himself. If he had enough time to prepare, no one could estimate the level of his god power. You should kill them. Harson rose his hand and pointed at Song-Yoon and Audrey. Then, all of a sudden, he jumped into the blood sea. The gory tombstone had come with him. A tremendous blood wave abruptly rose. Energy columns in blood hue shot out and dyed this world crimson. The ivory-white divine light, connecting the powers of 5 element, emerged in a pentagonal formation and raised above the blood sea. Haig stood in the center of the magical pentagonal formation like a heartless god. Flames danced in his eyes. A dark gold orb appeared in front of his glabella, which had a lot of lines and drawings. Vaguely, that orb was a miniature figure of ancient god continent that bounced accordingly to Haig's beating heart. When the globe appeared in front of his glabella, Haig wasn't bound or affected by the blood sea anymore. His body had the energy that would never cease. Your burning purgatory makes you pay with your flesh and soul to increase your power quickly. However, since I've fused with the ancestral star, I don't need to sacrifice anything to absorb the energy from the ancestral star to refill my body. What do you have to fight me? The divine pentagonal formation under Haig's body suddenly became dazzling as it released halos of radiant divine light. They moved and swirled around Haig continually. Energy shot out fast under Haig's feet and created the power to seal this world. After his energy had diffused, the blood sea diluted and faded away. Slowly, everything had calmed down. Beams of blood chi have washed away and were destroying the evil mind-invading energy. Shortly after, the entire blood sea had vanished besides the bloody gravestone above Harson's head. Haig stood on the pentagonal divine formation as if he had put himself in a dreamy star domain where he was the god of the universe. Each move of his carried immense power of the ancient continent, which would last forever. Sky Cage. Haig closed his arms as if he had caught something in his palm and pressed it. Everybody could see that when Haig closed his arms, The bloody gravestone above Harson's head was pressed smaller. It looked like a stone tablet that was contorted by the giant hand of an angel. Bones of Harson's skeletal body cracked as if they were about to shatter. The dark red bones tore his skin and jutted out of his body under the pressure. Harson looked pitifully horrendous. He didn't look like either a human or a demon. Now you know why the elders of our clan chose me instead of you? Haig's face was cold and indifferent. He used a nonchalant voice to continue. I am gifted. I am the chosen one by the ancestral star. Facing me, you are encountering the progress of an entire race. It's just in vain. You will never succeed. Boom, boom, boom. While talking, Haig pressed his hands together. Harson's bones broke entirely. His body deformed as if there were two mountains crushing him. The bloody gravestone directly turned into a cluster of blood gas that exploded and then stormed into Harson's skeleton. The warriors who were fighting slowly resumed their sanity. Some of them had terrible wounds that were deep to the bone. Some of them were now cold corpses or dried ones without a drop of water, as if they have been weathered for years. What's going on? Arg, that mad dog Harson again. He didn't spare his own kind. Too heartless. He doesn't have a bit of humanity in his heart anymore. Warriors of different races cursed him in fright and rage. Mia, the one who had a close relationship with Harson, was also outraged. She glared at him maliciously. Harson had stirred up a common hostility. Song Yoon and Audrey had gotten rid of the restraint of the evil mind-invading power first. They exchanged looks and formed a strange, tacit understanding. Roar! Song Yoon roared like a wild tiger getting out of the cage. His murderous aura was released as sharp as a lance. Light flashed in his tiger eyes like torches. His iron-like body rolled, and he attacked Harson. Crack! 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 Song Yoon dragged Harson's shattered body and tore him into pieces. Audrey floated with her hollow body. The image of her soul altar emerged in her glabella, which was a dozen times smaller than the real one. Her soul altar looked like an exquisite crystal pendant where billions of soul threads gushed out and created a net that covered Harson's head. The soul threads squeezed and pulled, trying to crush Harson's soul altar. Song Yoon and Audrey were mortal enemies. These two races had fought for so many years. They had never been calmly talking to each other. However, because of Harson the madman, the two archenemies had joined hands to kill Harson and erase this unidentified factor. Mia watched everything coldly. She saw Haig explode Harson's bones and Song Yoon tearing his body apart. Eventually, Audrey had used her soul ability to wind his soul altar. Mia stood calmly right from the beginning. She found that Harson today wasn't the Harson she had known. Although Harson was wild and brutal, he would only treat his enemies that way. He would never attack his own kind. She knew that Harson still made mistakes. He hadn't grown up yet. But currently, Harson wasn't a member of the God Clan anymore in her eyes. He was a maniac who didn't spare his fellows. He had become a brutal butcher that even Mia wanted to destroy. She didn't agree with Harson. Looking at Haig, Audrey, and Song Yoon attack him, she didn't say a word to tell Haig to show mercy or ask the other warriors to help. She thought that Harson shouldn't continue to live. Everybody quieted down. Shi Yin did the same. However, his silence was different from the others. While he was staying quiet, his soul altar was ready. He had always paid attention to Harson's vital signs. He thought that Harson wouldn't make something that big without a decent ending. The reason why he stood indifferently was that Harson hadn't died yet. Shi Yin didn't know why he could feel a bigger danger from Harson. He knew that Harson had merged with Xin Shan's will and bones. Besides the death power Upanishad, he had mastered the corpse chi of Frederick. He could use the corpse chi to urge his god power and resurrect himself from death. Shi Yin had seen it once. He thought that Harson would resurrect once again because his soul altar hadn't been destroyed yet, and although his bones were ground, they weren't burned to ashes. Harson's blood hadn't vanished even one drop. His terrifying energy was still moving in his blood. Quietly, he was using the corpse chi to create another miracle. But it wasn't what had scared Shi Yin. Shi Yin could vaguely feel that this holy mountain, this world tree inside the mountain, and even this ancient continent, had somehow favored Harson and used a method that only Harson could feel to transfer energy into his body. Just like when Shi Yan's acupuncture points were gathering essence chi of the dead, which no one could recognize, Desolate was caring about Harson with its special treatment. Haig didn't know it. Song Yun and Audrey couldn't sense or guess. As the experts of the big star area kept silent with a cold face, they all thought that Harson was dead upon looking at him. Audrey, we should eliminate the one from the heavenly monster tribe, Haig reminded her all of a sudden. Good then, Audrey gently nodded. Her eyes now gazed at Song Yun. Song Yun wasn't panicked. He guffawed and transformed back to his fat, human body. He appeared by Shi Yin, turning to him and squinting his small eyes. You choose one between Haig and Audrey? Haig didn't change his countenance. Audrey darkened her face, talking coldly and darkly. Shi Yin, this is a matter between the Imperial Dark Tribe and the Heavenly Monster Tribe. I hope you stay away from this. I'm curious, Shi Yin frowned. If I stay aside, will you join Haig to kill Song Yun? Audrey nodded. Then what? Shi Yin sounded surprised. Then you and I will join hands to kill Haig. And then we will have a brutal battle to take that Genesis fruit? Audrey quieted down. She had thought like that. Do you think it's practical? Shi Yin felt funny. Do you think Haig is that dumb to let me join hands with you and kill him? You think that things would develop as you thought? I know it isn't practical. You, Song Yun, Haig and I, we're all here for the Genesis fruit. Not all of us can get the fruit. Only one can do it. No one could say what would happen or how to arrange this. Shi Yin suddenly jolted. He looked at the bones of Harson and sensed quietly. He immediately had a chill in his heart. Chapter 1185. Replace the world. Chapter 1185. Replace the world. Harson had turned into a pulp of broken bones and smashed flesh. However, something was changing subtly in that bloody mess. If Shi Yin hadn't cultivated death and life power Upanishad, and if he hadn't reached third sky of ethereal god realm, he wouldn't have been able to see that tiny but magical change. It seemed like a celestial hand was carefully and dedicatedly snatching the rolls of nature to help Harson modify and build up each of his fiber muscles. It was making him even more perfect. Unbelievable. The soul threads that had nailed Harson's soul altar were still pulling. However, they were bewitched by an unknown force. Thus, Audrey didn't recognize anything strange. The net woven by the soul threads to squeeze off Harson's soul altar had become ineffective. Somewhere in the untold world, an energy had contacted Harson and helped him urge another power in his skeleton, the corpse chi, to deceive Audrey, Song Yun, and Haig. It had given Harson a chance to resurrect. Song Yun, Haig, and Audrey thought that Harson was dead. The other members of the God Clan and the outstanding warriors of the other star areas would never have thought that Harson was having a marvelous transformation. In this area, only Shi Yin had cultivated death and life power Upanishad, which gave him a better sense of life magnetic field and life energy fluctuation. He could vaguely capture this tiny change. He had two options now. He could tell Song Yun, Haig, and Audrey about this. He believed that they would forcefully kill Harson and utterly kill him. Shi Yin was sure that even though the mysterious power had favored Harson, Harson wasn't going to be able to survive when Song Yun, Haig, and Audrey attacked him at the same time. He had another option. He could choose to protect Harson and give him time to finish his transformation and resurrect. Shi Yin kept silent as he was absorbed in his thoughts as he was weighing pros and cons. He had to study Harson's resurrection case carefully to find the tendency that benefited him the most. Harson wasn't a true member of the God Clan anymore. Shi Yin could tell that when he tried to kill Haig and Mia. At the same time, Harson seemed to not want to be on Shi Yan's side. He had something he had to fulfill and insist. Shi Yin didn't know from where he had this insistence. Shi Yin didn't know whether Harson's insistence could be a threat to his future or not. But right now, Haig was too powerful. He wasn't so sure he could defeat this guy. Shi Yin had chosen his option. If your Imperial Dark Tribe can join hands with the God Clan, I can cooperate with Song Yun. The God clan is the mortal enemy of my immortal demon clan. When you joined him, you've become my enemy too. Shi Yin sighed and said to Audrey reluctantly, although I don't want it, I have to say that we're no longer each other's allies. He nodded to Tsang Yun and said, I'm going to deal with Haig. Tsang Yun smiled happily. Shi Yin turned around and looked at Wu Feng, Wu Bai, Zhao Shan, Zhao Hai, Sha Zhao, and Imo Fo. You guys can choose to be with me and help resist Mia, Phelps, and the God Warriors. I can focus only on Haig then. Of course, you guys can choose to stay on Audrey's side. I'll follow you. Wu Feng, Wu Bai, Zhao Shan, Zhao Hai, and Sha Zhao had always followed him, so they showed their attitude immediately. After Shang Yu and Cecilia had escaped the previous battle, of course, they wouldn't choose Audrey. They planned to follow Shi Yin always. Fuller and the other warriors who had been with Audrey all the time hesitated for a while before saying sorry to Audrey. We're sorry. We won't be friends with the God Clan. You've broken your promise when you joined Haig. Audrey had a glum gleam in her eyes. She finally recognized that while she didn't pay attention, Shi Yin had gained respect and admiration from other warriors. It turned out that Shi Yin had replaced her leadership in their minds. I can kill Harson. It's easier to kill you, you know. Haig mocked and shook his head disdainfully. Being an immortal demon, you should try to live your life like a stray dog. You shouldn't be greedy for the Genesis fruit. You aren't really practical, are you? Haig was still standing in the center of the divine pentagonal formation. The orb of the ancient god continent sparkled in front of his forehead, while the flames were dancing in his eyes. His heart didn't beat vigorously anymore, but it didn't mean that his energy was decreasing. Simply, he had gathered enough god power. He was now at his peak condition. Crack, crack, crack. Clear cracking sounds echoed from Shi Yan's bones. He had transformed into the immortal demon body in just a blink of an eye. The blood chi in his body surged massively. Each drop of his immortal demon blood was like a burning, erupting volcano that hemmed the formidable power. The acupuncture points of his entire body became like a big river or a death trap with torrential negative energy. Instantly, his body shriveled and his eyes became crimson. While his god power was rocketing, the starlight above his head twinkled and shone on his head. He looked like he was holding the entire starry sky on his head. Dazzling light bright world. Haig hissed, his eyes cold and indifferent. He didn't have any glimpse of human emotions. His sane condition frightened people. The light divine boat shot out billions of light beams. However, they weren't straight lines. They were meandering ones like a halo that grouped with each other to create thousands of light formations above his head. They were triangular, rectangular, pentagonal, hexagonal, and even octagonal formations with the power of 5 elements. They could perform magical abilities thoroughly. Haig had used his light power Upanishad to chain the powers of 5 elements. His ethereal extent could perform everything that this world has. Just like the Creator, Haig could destroy everything with a single thought in his mind. This was the supernatural power that even the incipient God realm experts couldn't do. Haig had adjusted the divine formations to mobilize many mountains and lakes here. Blocks of cracked soils, trees of the forest, and pieces of shattered land made a downpour and covered every single inch of space around Shi Yin. Shi Yan's blood-red eyes became ferocious. As he knew space power Upanishad, he recognized that Haig had confined the space around him. Haig's magical world had invaded Shi Yan's room. Shi Yin couldn't use his space power Upanishad because the area he was now in wasn't familiar land anymore. It was the world that Haig had created by his divine light and the 5 elements power Upanishad. In this world, Haig was the sole god. Unless he had smashed this world, he would be confined in every aspect when he fought Haig. He couldn't use his best abilities of each power Upanishad. Haig could know every single move of his even before he carried it out. Haig could kill him easily. In this world, Haig was the god that could do everything. He could pour his energy endless into this world to do whatever he wanted. Haig was using his own world to replace the real world. Even incipient god realm experts couldn't perform this intimidating power. Haig was worth being the future leader of the God Clan. Although he was at Ethereal God Realm, he was already formidable. No wonder why he could defeat Harson. Yin finally took a real look at Haig's intimidation. He knew that Haig would be the most terrifying opponent of his life. If he couldn't defeat Haig, he would never ease his mind for the rest of his life. Space confinement. Use an unreal world to replace the real world. When Haig used his power Upanishad, it was like he was using the abilities of the eternal world. He could control the power of the universe and hold this entire space in his hands. The other warriors could see Yin and Haig staying in a fantasy world. They could see the two of them clearly, but they couldn't feel any energy impact. However, from every move of Yin and Haig in that fantasy world, they knew that the two were engaging in a fight. When Mia's team saw Haig confining Yin in his world, they were baffled. However, they woke up immediately and surged their god power to spin the soul altar and release the ethereal extent. Their battle with Wu Feng's team began. "We shouldn't stay idle." Song Yun faced the sky and roared. He turned into his white tiger form, which was as big as a mountain. His energy was imposing and tyrannical, as if he could destroy the world with only one touch. Audrey snorted and floated up. The dark god Imperial throne emerged and connected to the fearsome abyss of the underworld. She had summoned many ghosts and demons, the special creatures of the underworld, which could move agilely as she wished like they were her real fingers. Cecilia and Shang Yingyu wore sad faces when they saw Yin being confined in Haig's world. They wanted to help him, but they felt so helpless. They knew Haig's intimidation. They knew that Haig was the strongest known warrior of this current generation. He was even stronger than his precursors. His power was formidable yet mysterious. Although they were impressed with Yin's power, they couldn't help but feel heavy-hearted when Yin was facing Haig directly. Although Harson was very frightening recently, and he had scared them out of their wit, Harson was defeated. Haig had destroyed him. As Yin had fought Harson in the desert, in the two women's points of view, Harson would have the same capacity as Yin because he had survived that battle. They deeply understood the meaning of this event. The two were so worried about Yin. In Haig's world, there was light, earth, and heaven with 5 elements. The 5 elements were the basis of the world. They could produce everything. Haig's world was independent like a real world. Using light power to chain the 5 powers Upanishads of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth, Haig had proven his innate endowment. No one could compare to him. At the same time, his learning capacity was unique. No wonder why the ancient god continent favored him. He was the designated successor, and the continent had proactively fused its origin with his soul. It was the recognition of earth and heaven for Haig. In Haig's world, Yin was bound. He couldn't use the power of earth and heaven, so he was left to use only the energy of his body to resist. Galaxies appeared above the thick blood sea. Yin bobbed in the blood sea and spun his soul altar, using the negative energy to create an evil tornado to wreak havoc in this fantasy world. His negative energy surged torrentially and filled with so many negative emotions. The deadly, brutal, desperate, fearful, destructive, resentful, and bloodthirsty emotions from his tornado were much more formidable than what Harson had performed. Moreover, as Yin had used the essence chi of the dead he had just taken in through his acupuncture points directly without refining, the evil power of this attack became more terrifying. When this kind of evil tornado attacked Haig's world, the power of negative moods had made this world look like doomsday. The void cracked and revealed space slits. It seemed like this world was about to crumble. Haig had to gather the energy of the ancient continent and condense his god power in the body to pour into his world to maintain the balance. He had to mend it continuously. Apparently, he had underestimated Yin's power. While he and Yin were fighting, the entire scene was disorderly and chaotic. Song Yun and Audrey were battling while Mia, Phelps, and the God Warriors were fiercely fighting against Wu Feng and Xia Zhao's team. No one paid attention to Harson. The pulp of crushed flesh and broken bones had connected to each other and formed a body. It seemed like a hand in the untold world was sewing Harson's body all together and helping him refine his body dedicatedly. Chapter 1186. Blood Sword-Breaking Divine Boat. Chapter 1186. Blood Sword-Breaking Divine Boat _ In the immense, misty world where the world tree grew, almost all of the most outstanding prodigies of the current generation of the entire cosmos were fighting to the death with each other. They fought for the Genesis fruit and for the next 10,000 years of prosperity for their clan. This battle was very important to all of them. The winner would become king, and the losers would have to kneel down in front of the victor for the next 10,000 years. In the fantasy world created by Haig's Power Upanishad, Shi Yin stood neatly in his blood sea. The blood sea rippled its viscous waves. Upon layers, it supported him floating above the red surface. Brilliant outer space streamers crossed each other above his head like starlight chains, drawing fantastic images in the sky. They were complex and mysterious, hiding the essence of the everlasting galaxy. The blood mist hovered above the galaxy, and the tornado of negative energy was wreaking havoc in this area. Desperate, resentment, fearful, bloodthirsty, and other negative feelings were examples of the endless evilness in people's minds. They could nibble their hearts and dirty their souls. They could send people to a cold, deadly silent prison, making them eternally consigned to damnation. It was the death prison triggered by the death power. In Haig's world, the sea was crying and seething. The ground cracked and shattered. The mountains collapsed while the trees and forest were ground into powder. This world was gradually crumbling. Shi Yin had used his Power Upanishad to destroy this world and send it back to the starting point. However, it wasn't that everything would turn out as he wanted. When the fantasy world corrupted, the pure energy of 5 elements flooded in from the horizon, the void, and even the abyss. The cycle of energy was generated and running continuously. It forcefully recreated the order of earth and heaven. It made the earth flat, the mountains stable, and the shattered things intact one more time. Someone had seized the role of the creature and gave everything a new life. Shi Yin had used his power to destroy while Haig used his power to mend things. With this world as the battlefield and their Power Upanishad the basis, they had tried their best to fight each other. Shi Yin was destined to stay in a disadvantaged condition in this battle. His enemy had controlled this battlefield and taken all the advantages and better conditions. Haig was the god of this world. Every time things changed and every time Shi Yin congregated energy, it consumed the god power he had condensed in his god power ancient tree, the negative energy he had collected, and the combustion of his immortal demon blood. He couldn't collect a beam of earth and heaven energy here. It was different to Haig. In this world, Haig was the real god. He could gather earth and heaven energy as much as he wanted. He could continuously draw energy from the ancient continent to refill himself. Even though Haig had to consume his energy, it was much easier for him compared to Shi Yin. If it was a battle of attrition, there was no doubt that Shi Yin would lose. He couldn't risk his life with Haig. While the mountains, lakes, and even the ground were changing, a shining divine boat tore the sky just like the messenger of light coming to clean the dark. Loud explosions reverberated. Boom, boom. The light divine boat had hundreds of thousands of magical formations carved on the body, which could join and combine into one entity. They carried the power of 5 elements and the in-depth meanings of earth and heaven. The divine boat tore the sky to come and brought with it the threat to crush creatures, mountains, and everything. It attacked Shi Yin directly. Galaxies created by Shi Yin's power were struck into pieces. The light divine boat had cut the starlight chains, which prevented them to reconnect. Even the crimson water of the blood sea started to evaporate when the holy light of the light divine boat shone on it. The water sizzled and vapored. This light divine boat represented Haig. It was the foundation of this world of light. Its role was like the world tree to desolate. It was the root or the heart. It wasn't wrong to say that the light divine boat was this world itself. If the divine boat were damaged, this world would be cracked accordingly. Shi Yin squinted. His blood-red eyes had 2 drops of blood vibrating, and it looked really frightening. They were the garnet immortal demon blood, which looked as beautiful as precious gemstones. Having them in his eyes, Shi Yin had mobilized and used all the immortal demon blood in his body. Haig appeared deep in the sky like the projection of a massive god observing the world underneath. He said indifferently, "Kill?" Swish. The light divine boat was like a venomous snake sticking its tongue out. The pointy tip of the boat opened and revealed the wooden white teeth that were biting Shi Yin. Ah, not that easy. Shi Yin smiled ferociously. His red finger stroked the blood vein ring as gently as if he was touching his lover's skin. A strange emotion flashed in his eyes. Bang! The sound of a sharp weapon coming out of its sheath arose. A blood light pierced the sky and forcefully stabbed the light divine boat. The eyes on the broadsword opened. The incredibly evil energy flooded like the rising tide. The blood sword seemed to be able to break the horizon and this entire fantasy world. It stabbed the light divine boat. Swoosh! The light divine boat exploded. Beams of blood light bloomed and moved around like sharp blades cutting this world. The world that Haig had created shattered in just a moment. The light divine boat cracked. The sky was pierced through. Shi Yin returned to the real world in just a blink of an eye. The giant gory broadsword was like a sharp, bloodthirsty saber of a demogorgon, quietly floating above Shi Yin's head. A beam of blood light from the sword tip seemed to connect to this holy mountain. Glug, glug. Blood started to ooze out the majestic holy mountain, which the blood sword drank. Then, the destructive energy fluctuated from the blood sword and frightened everybody. It was the will of eliminating all creatures. This will came from the blood sword, the holy mountain, and from the deep area of this ancient continent. The blood sword and the holy mountain had fused into one. It had triggered some kind of terrifying energy inside the mountain and made it bleed. The blood sword drank the blood from the mountain, which supplied the sword with surging, abundant energy at an unimaginable speed. It seemed to be different from the way Haig drew energy from ancient god continent. Everybody inside the mountain felt their hair rising. It seemed like the holy mountain had just woken up. They felt as horrible as if they were inside the stomach of an ancient beast. This feeling was so real. It was so real that they even found the wall of the mountain twitching like real flesh. Someone couldn't help but shout. They felt their soul get stuck, so they had to try their best to get rid of this place. No one wanted to stay here anymore. Some of them appeared to have collapsed. What happened? Cecilia found this immense world covered with blood, and even the viscous blood streaks were found in between the clouds. The smell was so nauseating. She had joined hands with Shanging Yu to fight Mia. After their times of ascetic cultivation, their god power was more condensed and abundant even though their realm didn't advance. When the two of them joined hands, they could subdue Mia and have time to watch around. When they saw Shi Yin getting rid of Haig's world, they also saw him reappear not far from them with the blood sword floating above his head. Looking at the blood sword, Shanging Yu showed her fear and respect. However, Cecilia discolored. He's the successor of the bloodthirsty master. Cecilia was aghast. Aside from her, when Mia, Phelps, Wu Feng, Mo Fo, and Sha Zhao saw the mark on the blood sword, they were dumbstruck and their faces were astounded. Especially Audrey. Her bright eyes showed her shock. Even her soul altar trembled when the big wave of astonishment swarmed over her mind. No matter how hard she had imagined, she would have never known that Shi Yan's inheritance came from the bloodthirsty master. As soon as that man arrived, he had shadowed the 4 great races. He had made the experts of the 4 races follow him. That man was the pole of the universe. Every member of the 4 great races knew about an unidentified madman who suppressed the 4 races to rule this vast cosmos and created a new order. His existence was mysterious and profound, as if he was the law. Haig showed his fear for the first time. He was afraid of this blood sword. Right when it emerged, this blood sword had pierced through his light divine boat and tore the world he had created with great efforts. How strong was that? He gazed at the sword and thought about a new plan. He intended to use the power he had hidden all the time. Standing beneath the blood sword, Shi Yin checked Harson's situation. He discolored. Harson had disappeared. To be exact, he didn't see the mess of Harson's flesh and bones. Not even a single drop of blood. He seemed to have disappeared into thin air. Since everybody saw him turn his head to check Harson, they also turned to see Harson. Everybody jolted up in fear and bewilderment. They looked around and tried to find something. They were looking for Harson's remains. They scanned every corner around and saw no trace of Harson. They all felt their hair rise. His corpse changed. People were startled. Only Yin knew that it was actually the corpse that changed. Harson had used corpse chi with an unknown force to resurrect. But where did he go? Yin felt insecure when Harson didn't reappear. In some aspect, this young man was much tougher than Haig. He was crazier and more unreasonable. With the tremendous power support, he had become deadly dangerous. Bang! The blood sword sent him a strange sound when it suddenly shook and gave Yin a peculiar feeling. His blood sword somehow matched with the energy of the holy mountain. It looked like the sword had just answered the mountain. Yin suddenly understood it. He lifted his head to look at the world tree immersing in the thick clouds, and then the guiding fruits. Eventually, his eyes stopped at the Genesis fruit that had the shape of the ancient continent. The Genesis fruit now had a hazy blue halo. That halo. Someone touched it. It was Harson. Harson had seized the chance when people were fighting to climb on the world tree and weaved through the guiding fruits. He was standing on the flaming crystal branches to wait for the Genesis fruit to ripen. The Genesis fruit quickly drew the essence power of the world tree. The crystal five-colored streamers moved like beautiful rivers through the branches towards the fruit. All of a sudden, the Genesis fruit shook hard. It seemed like the fruit had just ripened, and it was about to fall off the branch. Harson was waiting right under the fruit. Harson. Damn it. He's still alive. Everybody boiled up. Their countenances changed in fear. Now they all glared at Harson with rage. Songyun, Haig, and Audrey changed their target in just a blink. They moved like three meteors shooting towards Harson. They didn't retain anything, but they burst out their best and fiercest attack. The three of them had tried their best to snatch the Genesis fruit. With the Genesis fruit in their hands, they could rule the universe for the next 10,000 years. Chapter 1187. Sly Change. Chapter 1187. Sly Change, _ Seeing Harson in this world once again had dragged people into their worst nightmares. Each of them was so restlessly insecure. Especially Songyun, Haig, and Audrey. They came here for the Genesis fruit and for 10,000 years of prosperity for their clan. For this purpose, they could do anything. However, Harson was standing right under the Genesis fruit. He just needed to reach his hand out to take the fruit. They would never show mercy. The ice-blue halos swirled around the Genesis fruit. It was like the ancient continent was born again with the power of the origin. Yin's co-soul sent him extreme vibes. He looked at the Genesis fruit and couldn't control his excitement. The vitality and energy seething in the Genesis fruit could compare to the total energy of dozens of incipient God realm experts. It was incredible. Nothing in this world, whether it was a matter or a crystal, could reach this level of tremendous energy. If they got the Genesis fruit, they would have the entire world and they could bring their clan back to the glory. It was common knowledge spread out among the four great races. Sizzle. A soft starlight like a ribbon shot to Harson brought the power of Space Upanishad. Yin was the last one who moved, but he appeared right next to Harson before Songyun, Audrey, or Haig. Talking about speed, who could beat the ones who cultivate space power Upanishad? The Genesis fruit now rippled with ice-blue halos right in front of Harson. That immense halo had the power to calm down the mind. Yin's hot-tempered state was comforted. He became placid. Standing under the blue halo, Harson didn't look insane anymore. His eyes became clear as if he had returned to his teenage times before Xian Shan had affected his soul. He looked pure and innocent as if he didn't have a dirty thought. This was who Harson really was. He looked up at the Genesis fruit and mumbled something faithfully Yin couldn't hear. The Genesis fruit swayed and released more ripples of ice-blue light. It tangled as if it was about to fall off the branch. Stop him! Songyun, Audrey, and Haig shouted ear-piercingly and asked Yin to stop or even kill Harson. Everybody could see that the Genesis fruit was about to fall and Harson was going to take it instantly. Yin remembered what the ring's spirit had told him. He knew that the Genesis fruit was crucial. He didn't hesitate or mind Harson's strange state. He extended one hand, crossing over Harson's shoulder to grab the Genesis fruit directly. Strangely, Harson still remained in his faithful posture as he kneeled on the tree branch and lowered his head, murmuring something. He didn't stop Yan's move. His eyes were clear like a lake. It seemed like the ice-blue halo of the Genesis fruit had cleaned the evilness in his soul and brought him back to his youth. But Yin still had an extremely insecure feeling. Harson looked like he was not harmful to humans and animals. He looked so innocent without a dark thought. However, Yin could see that while the young man was murmuring, his body was shriveling. It was the burning purgatory power Upanishad. He was urging his power discreetly. Boom! A pale light shot out of Harson's head. It wound around Yan's arm like a vine. It was the power that Harson had urged by burning his soul and body. It had both the death energy and the corpse chi. Yan's arm eroded. Chunks of meat fell off his bones. Shortly after, Yan's arm had only bare bones, and even his bones were being eroded. That pale light moved around his arm and reached for his body. Yin felt his hair rising. Everything happened within a blink of an eye. It was so fast that he didn't react timely. When the flesh of his arm fell off, he finally reacted. He immediately urged the co-soul and used the heaven flame to resist that pale light. His co-soul emerged from the soul altar. Harson's clear eyes brightened. Harson, who had kept his head low right from the beginning, lifted his head and showed his bright but cold smile. His eyes were now jet black, and it showed his brutal, bloodthirsty desire. He looked savage to the utmost. This was the real Harson. Everything he had just seen was just his disguise. Yin got it. Harson looked at Yan's co-soul and licked his lips greedily. I want your origin. You don't have faith. Your mind isn't strong and persistent enough. I should inherit the legacy of the bloodthirsty master. Only the one who had fused with the origin could take the Genesis fruit. Harson had waited here to hunt the origin. He wanted to use the origin to be eligible to seize the Genesis fruit. Yin had fallen into his trap. Song-yoon, Haig, and Audrey shouted ear-piercingly when the sounds of cracking bones echoed in their chest. Their moving bodies halted in the middle of the air. It seemed like an invisible hand had held them there. Rattle, rattle. The world tree slightly rattled. Its thick branches moved. The massive shade of the tree was like a demon that pressured people's souls. Song-yoon, Haig, and Audrey hurried to stop Harson, so they had urged their energy to the max level. Divine light flashed continuously in their bodies, but they couldn't get rid of the constraint. They couldn't come close to Harson and Yin even an inch. From under the tree, Cecilia, Shangyu, and Mia had stopped fighting. They were looking at Audrey, Song-yoon, and Haig being held in the void, and at Harson and Yin up there with bewildered faces. It's desolate, Shangyu shouted. She couldn't control her mood as she said, it has chosen only Yin and Harson. Only Harson and Yin have gained its approval, so only they are eligible to fuse with the Genesis fruit. Hearing her, everybody else understood it immediately. In the desert, the icy soul-cold crystal had pierced through Yin's body as he had proactively taken all the damage to save Cecilia and Shangyu, which also helped him get Desolate's approval. Right after that, they found brilliant crystals scattered here and there, including the icy soul-cold crystal, the heart water crystal, and even the essence blood crystal, the precious treasure that could recover the body of the immortal demon warriors quickly. Apparently, Desolate had arranged everything when it chose Yin. Harson was its other choice. After fighting Yin in the desert, Harson knew the truth of his body. He knew that he wasn't a genuine god warrior anymore. With Shan's bones in his body and the stubborn, wild will of the demon warrior in his soul, Harson wasn't himself anymore. He had collapsed and wandered like a body without the soul in the desert. He cried and screamed, losing himself. He had fallen into bedevilment. No one knew what Harson had experienced, but it was true that he had the approval of Desolate. Desolate took care of him. That was how he could reappear here with mightier powers. It was obvious that Harson had just become a pulp of flesh and broken bones. If he could stand here once again, it wasn't his real power. Everyone knew that Desolate had chosen Harson too. Sure Yin and Harson would compete for the Genesis fruit. They were the favored warriors. They had the chance to change the future. Songyun, Haig, and Audrey were confined. They couldn't wiggle. It was Desolate's work. This place was the ancient continent and Desolate's kingdom. It could control every one of them. Only Desolate could tie Songyun, Haig, and Audrey and make them the audience who couldn't join the competition. Thus, Desolate had thrown them into the trash. It had confirmed that they weren't eligible to keep the Genesis fruit. They were destined to fall into tragedy. No one had continued fighting. Zhao Shan, Sha Zhao, Mia, and Cecilia had stopped. They wore fearful faces and their vision passed Haig, Audrey, and Song Yun before fixing on Harson and Shi Yin. Haig, Audrey, and Song Yun were the favorite children of God. They were the hope of their clan and the most dazzling generation of this universe. All three of them had fused with the origin. However, these three were the losers in this competition for the Genesis fruit. They didn't even have the right to join the game. Quite the contrary, Shi Yin, a non-famous warrior, together with Harson the madman, had gained the approval. It was actually out of any warrior's expectation. Be careful. Shang Yingyu suddenly shouted. Harson was smiling darkly. Black light shot out of his eyes. He wanted to use his soul altar to tie down Shi Yan's co-soul. He wanted to refine the soul that Shi Yin had sealed and carved his soul to make himself the new master of Grace Mainland's origin. Only the warriors of the four great races could fuse with the origin of the ancient continent. Harson could satisfy this condition. Today, he was even more qualified than anybody else. He had the bones of the immortal demon warrior in his god body. He was a true crossbreed. The pale light of the new power that Harson had released was the combination of death energy and corpse chi. The flaming origin could stop it for now. Shi Yan's arm didn't have any bit of flesh except for the bone frame. He looked really scary. At the same time, Harson was trying to attack his co-soul to seize the origin. Unexpectedly, Harson had gained the upper hand. You should know your situation. Give me the co-soul and the blood vein ring. If I become the successor of the bloodthirsty master, your host soul won't be destroyed. You can choose to follow me too. Harson looked at Shi Yin and smiled. I'm also one of the candidates who the blood vein ring had chosen. You've taken all the things that belong to me. Without you, everything would have belonged to me. Only I can receive the inheritance of the bloodthirsty master. You don't have faith. You don't have the fixation on destroying this world. You're not suitable. Harson laughed wildly. His soul altar released an evil force that sucked Shi Yan's co-soul like a magnet. His co-soul was shaken hard. Gradually, it left Shi Yan's soul altar. The Genesis fruit was ripe. It didn't fall off as some strange force was supporting it and making it float. It was waiting for one of the two, Shi Yin or Harson, to take it and have the power to change the structure of the world. I had never thought that you would be my rival. Shi Yin had almost lost one arm. However, he didn't look hurt at all. His red eyes were like dripping blood. Looking at his co-soul floating away, he was strangely placid. He didn't take action but closed his eyes. The soul altar emerged from his head. His body quieted down. Harson also closed his eyes. His soul altar that was connected to his brain flew out just like Shi Yan's. Shi Yan's co-soul floated between the two soul altars, watching the last competition. Chapter 1188. The Collision of the Two Worlds. Chapter 1188. The Collision of the Two Worlds. Haig, Song Yun, and Audrey lifted their head to watch while their god bodies were confined. They couldn't move. Under them were Cecilia, Phelps, Mia, the god warriors, and the experts of the big star areas. They all lifted their heads to watch the sky and saw the two eligible young men. Shi Yin and Harson. No one had thought that Desolate would accept these two. They thought that Haig and Audrey had better chances. However, the reality was too far away from their guess. However, they suddenly could accept this fact. as Shi Yin was a member of the immortal demon clan with the origin and the inheritance of the bloodthirsty force. Such a character was eligible to get the Genesis fruit. Harson was the best warrior of his generation in the Charteris family of the God clan. His performance was extraordinary and desolate. Somehow, he had surpassed Haig. Harson's characteristics included bloodthirstiness, brutality, heartlessness, and he was inhumane. Such a character was no doubt the most extreme. No one could ignore him. Thinking carefully, everyone knew that it was logical when Desolate recognized him. Today, under the Genesis fruit, the two of them were releasing their soul altars and fighting the last battle to seize the Genesis fruit. Everybody waited silently. They had stopped fighting each other to focus and see who would be the one that would change the structure of this cosmos, Shi Yin or Harson. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Shi Yin's bright ethereal extent arose behind his back. The dazzling suns, moons, and stars created the vast galaxies, which looked so real. A crystal soul altar hovered in this galaxy-like ethereal extent as the core of its soul. Sizzle, sizzle. A burning world like a purgatory emerged above Harson's head. It was his ethereal extent. Harson's ethereal extent was filled with thick blood, the vivid red sky and the shattered, smoking mountains. It looked like burning hell. His world had the energy of death and corpse chi with endless burning intent. Between the two ethereal extents was a co-soul with surging energy. It was shaking as it was struggling with two different auras. The strange thing was that Harson's ethereal extent also had a strong suction force to the co-soul. It was unbelievable to other people. Even Shi Yin felt that it was strange. His co-soul had his soul seal, and it was developed from the heaven flames. Usually, the co-soul listened to him. In fact, it happened that way. He could control the co-soul as he pleased. But it was different now. Harson's appearance seemed to have given his co-soul another option. Harson somehow had a subtle connection with the co-soul. He pondered and something popped up in his mind. Desolate? Desolate was controlling everything discreetly. His co-soul had fused with the origin of Grace Mainland, which had been detached from Desolate. So technically, it was part of Desolate. Desolate had the capacity to control his co-soul. This place was especially the territory of Desolate. If Desolate chose Harson to fight Shi Yin, it would create a fair environment by cutting off his advantages. As soon as he considered this possibility, he had an idea that he wanted to try to test his assumption. He used the devouring power Upanishad to urge the black hole and aimed at Harson's soul altar. It was the power Upanishad of the bloodthirsty master. He had tested it before. No soul altar could resist the black hole. As long as it flew out of the body, the black hole could absorb it. This power Upanishad had brought him the marvelous benefit that he couldn't describe. Right now, he was going to use it to deal with Harson. A wild suction force came from the black hole and aimed at Harson. Strangely, Harson wasn't affected. Both of his ethereal extent and soul altar were fine. They didn't even move. It seemed like an invisible force had distorted his power Upanishad and made the devouring power ineffective. Shi Yin discolored in fear. Then, he got it. He understood that Desolate had controlled everything. The world tree was just a part of Desolate. In this world, Desolate was the law and the principles of powers Upanishads. Desolate was the God and the way of virtue and justice. Desolate was the fountainhead of the entire universe. This conception made Shi Yin drop his jaw in awe. Who else besides nature itself could deactivate the bloodthirsty master's devouring power Upanishad? You're right. Desolate is nature. It's the way of virtue and justice. Desolate holds the fountainhead of powers Upanishads. The ring spirit's voice arose timely in his soul. All powers Upanishads, the truth and essence of this world come from this planet. It's the greatest out of everything in nature. It's the law. And the most terrifying thing is that Desolate has consciousness and intelligence. It has the will of life that's different from anything else. No one knows what it thinks. Why does the blood sword seem to be similar to the holy mountain? And why could it make the mountain bleed? Shi Yin hurried to ask. This holy mountain shields the world tree. It was the body of the precursor from the immortal demon clan. The sword in your hand was made of his spine. Of course, they have some connection, answered the ring's spirit. Oh boy, Shi Yin couldn't help but utter. He knew that 100,000 years ago, the first generation of experts of the 4 ancient continents had come to this place and tried to refine desolate and change the rule of nature. It allowed themselves to create the way of virtue and justice. Of course, the 4 of them had buried their bodies here. The incipient extent of the God Clan's precursor had turned into a miniature version of the world that Shi Yin had taken and carved into his ethereal extent, which had boosted him to 3rd sky of ethereal god realm. The remains of the holy beast white tiger of the heavenly monster tribe had turned into a mountain range, which Zhang Yun had found and taken its essence. The soul of the imperial dark tribe's precursor had turned into an icy blue halo that covered Desolate and prevented any warrior from intruding. It had become Desolate's protection. The god body of the immortal demon clan's precursor was refined. It became the holy mountain in the center, which was the armor of the world tree. The blood sword in his hand was surprisingly the spine of that immortal demon precursor. No wonder why it looked similar to the holy mountain and could even trigger the mountain. If the blood sword was the spine of that precursor, who was the bloodthirsty master? How could he control this sword? When this thought emerged, Shi Yan's soul altar started to tremble. This thought had stirred up his mind to the point where he had almost lost connection with his ethereal extent. It was because Harson's soul altar, which was controlling the burning purgatory, had approached him. The terrifying power of things from hell came from Harson's ethereal extent that forcefully intruded Shi Yan's ethereal extent and brought an apocalypse to his ethereal extent. Harson wanted to destroy Shi Yan's ethereal extent. It was Harson's attack. Stay focused and deal with Harson first. The ring's spirit thundered in his head. Shi Yin temporarily put aside his chaotic thoughts. He pulled himself together and became placid. Seeing Harson's earth-destroying purgatory arrive, Shi Yin immediately urged his soul altar to change the world he had controlled. In his universe, the suns and moons released dazzling lights that shined on the coming purgatory world. Harson's world had a crimson, burning sky, and the bleeding ground had many wounds. The mountains shattered while the sea was seething crazily. Countless meteors ignited and fell onto the ground inside Harson's world, attempting to destroy everything. The meteors were hissing through the sky, and then it plowed the ground and created many deep ditches like the teeth of a comb. Lava surged from those ditches and tried to melt down everything. It was doomsday. Harson had caused this deadly catastrophe and sent it into Shi Yan's ethereal extent. He wanted to ruin Shi Yan's ethereal extent and turn it into ashes. Harson stayed in his purgatory world, his soul energy fluctuation more terrifying. His soul altar also emitted tremendous energy fluctuations. Harson had mastered his burning purgatory power Upanishad, and this world was being burned down like doomsday, which was matched with his power Upanishad. It could provide him with endless energy. Quite the contrary, as Shi Yan's galaxy with countless stars got attacked by meteors, shattering mountains and seas in Harson's world, he felt exhausted as if he couldn't endure it for a long time. This was a battle between the soul altars where the ethereal extents wore each other out and used a world to destroy the other. It was much more deadly and dangerous than using the body to fight. From the ground, the other warriors could see the 2 ethereal extents like 2 projections in the sky. Watching the collisions happening above their heads, they held their breath and wore panic-stricken countenances. This battle was so terrifying that it got beyond their imagination. Harson and Shi Yan's ethereal extents were colliding and attacking each other, giving them the scene of an apocalypse. They all thought that they would be obliterated. If Harson wins, his ethereal extent with the power of the doomsday will devour all of us, said Shang Yingyu, her head lowered. Everybody was shocked. The warriors became aghast and anxious. They quietly urged their power. The fantasy worlds of mountains, seas, deserts, and forests emerged above their heads. They were ready for the oncoming battle. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. Shortly after, the suns and moons in Shi Yan's ethereal extent spun and moved into a magical formation. It looked like some divine formation. Using the suns, moons, and stars as the basis and the star power Upanishad as principles. The formation that Shi Yin created could shake the entire world. Shi Yan's entire ethereal extent was changing. The suns, moons, and stars were moving into different marvelous patterns with the everlasting star power. When the earth and heaven aren't extinguished and the stars are everlasting, I will never be taken down. A mutter echoed in Shi Yan's soul altar like an angel's statement that showed the assured faith that could shake the whole world. Chapter 1189. The Burning Karma Flame. Chapter 1189. The Burning Karma Flame _ When earth and heaven and the stars aren't extinguished, I will never extinguish. Shi Yan's voice was low-pitched at first. After he said these words, the echo reverberated unceasingly. The echo expanded, and it was grumbling like thunderclaps that cracked the sky, reaching every corner of his world of the galaxy. His words were like the hand of the Creator from the mighty heaven blooming in his magnificent galaxy. The shattered world was repaired. The mountains and lakes reappeared. The sea calmed down. The ancient trees and forests were revived. Wherever his voice passed, his world had quieted down rapidly. In his world with the galaxy, the suns and moons moved and carried out the will of earth and heaven, echoing his voice and giving it endless power. It was the magical secret technique that snatched the right of the Creator. This world was his ethereal extent. He could do anything he pleased. In this area, he could create the sky and earth, making water or fire. He could make the earthquake with his thoughts easily. When his soul altar spins, the death and life, space, and star power Upanishad took turns to appear and perform their best abilities. The doomsday-like purgatory of Harson's ethereal extent halted. It was confined, and even the apocalypse it brought was frozen. Impossible. How could it be? Haig screamed. He had lost his placid visage, and his eyes were filled with shock. Mia, Phelps, and the god warriors were dumbstruck as if they were watching something unbelievable. They dropped their jaws in awe. Audrey, Song Yun, and the others gawked as if they couldn't believe what they saw with their eyes. They all looked at the new changes in Shi Yan's ethereal extent. The suns, moons, and stars in his ethereal extent were moving in some marvelous trajectories. They had generated countless mysterious and fantasy images. The other warriors could see the life cycle of the sun, moon, and star from birth to death. They could even see existing principles of other things in this world. The sequences of images were projecting the cradle and development of creatures in the vast universe. They looked lively and incredibly surreal. It was the world created by the death and life, space, and star power Upanishads. They had developed the entire life cycle of life from the beginning to the end. What made Haig and the god warriors stunned was the change of the suns, moons, and stars. This change had the same effect with a lost secret technique of the god clan's light power Upanishad. Even Haig, the genius using light power Upanishad, couldn't decode this mysterious supernatural power. He couldn't get the essence of it. In principle, that supernatural power had been lost in the river of history. It shouldn't appear in this mortal world. However, it seemed like Shi Yin could use this power currently. It was a big humiliation to Haig and his god clansmen. How could Shi Yin use the essence power that Haig, the top warrior of the new generation of the god clan, couldn't learn? How could they swallow this insult? Most of the warriors couldn't stay calm. They felt surprised and their eyes were panic-stricken and misty. Only one of them had sobered quickly. He acted as if he had understood the reason. It was Song Yun. From the remains of his holy ancestor, he seemed to know the secret of that ancient time. He knew the precursor of the god clan who had buried his body here, his incipient extent becoming part of desolate forever. He could tell that Shi Yin had encountered the mysteries of that precursor's incipient extent. That precursor was the expert of the first generation of warriors that ancient god continent had given birth to. His soul had the essence of light power Upanishad. He got Desolate's approval indeed. Song Yun was stunned. It turns out that it's the light creator's secret technique of our clan. Harson's dark and heavy voice sounded as if it came from somewhere far away. His soul moved on the soul altar above the sea of consciousness. His sea of consciousness looked like a thick, electric mesh net that was connected to his ethereal extent, which was showing the doomsday. Due to the change of the suns, moons, and stars, the wave of destroying purgatory from Harson halted as it was invading Yan's ethereal extent. The attack of his apocalypse couldn't attack Yan's ethereal extent more. Harson's soul was like it had just felt a lightning attack. It smoked, and another power of evilness was generated in Harson's world. Boom! Harson's ethereal extent was being burned. A fierce, unknown karma flame was burning and expanding at an incredible speed. This kind of karma flame could burn space, world, planets, and even the sea. Harson's ethereal extent was burned. Yan's ethereal extent, which was being invaded, also burned. Yan's soul began to weaken fast. His soul was tamed with the flame. As his ethereal extent burned, his soul and soul altar were both affected. He couldn't endure this kind of powerfully destructive blaze. This kind of flame had the power to destroy the world with evilness that nothing could extinguish. No one knew when Harson got this flame, but they all panicked from seeing it. Haig wasn't an exception. As his compatibility with the flaming origin was beyond everyone else here, he discolored in fright after a slight sense. This flame has the aura of desolate. It's the flame that Harson got from desolate. It's also a heaven flame, the heaven flame of desolate's origin. Only the ancient continent could give birth to the heaven flames of the origin. As desolate was the key ancient continent, it definitely could have heaven flames. Harson got its heaven flame. Countless years had passed and only he had this glory. He got the heaven flame from desolate. From some aspect, he could be deemed as having the origin of desolate. This was unbelievable. Harson's ethereal extent was burning. The flame that could burn everything down was expanding. It reached Yan's ethereal extent of galaxies. Yan's ethereal extent was brilliant like a real galaxy with suns, moons, and stars with mountains, lakes, and forests. However, it was burning by Harson's karma flame now. From Harson's burning ethereal extent, the flame was expanding. And Yan's soul altar was trembling hard. His host soul was a lamp in front of this strong wind. It flickered as if it was going to be extinguished in any minute. His situation was so critical. The ethereal extent and the soul altar were the roots of a warrior. They were much more important than the god body. Once they burned down, the seal and vestige of a warrior would be cleaned from this world. He would have no hope in resurrecting. If his body was destroyed, he could find another way to continue living. If the soul or the ethereal extent were destroyed, there was no way to be revived. Cecilia and Shang Yingyu were watching Yan's ethereal extent burning from the ground. As they didn't know what to do, they felt so restless and anxious. All of a sudden, they soared up into the sky. Right at that moment, two lights descended from the sky like meteors that hit them. Blood splashed from Shang Yingyu's and Cecilia's bodies. They had no color in their faces. Their soul altars were weakened to the worst. They fell on the ground like feathers. They looked so helter-skelter with blood on their bodies. It was a punishment. They surrounded Cecilia and Shang Yingyu. They faced Mia, Phelps, and the other warriors of the God Clan. They were afraid that those experts would seize the chance and kill them. "Hey, are you okay?" Sha Zhao and Jiao Shan hurried to ask. Shang Yingyu and Cecilia had gotten hit once, but they seemed to lose all their power. They looked so feeble that they couldn't even talk. Some of them wanted to participate in the battle up there, but seeing their situation, they felt so chilled inside. They immediately abandoned that thought. Looking at the sky, they were filled with fear and respect. "Their conditions aren't good." Wu Feng stormed over and said with a dark face, "Take every pellet we have to give them. We must keep their god bodies safe. As long as their god bodies are filled with blood qi, they will have enough energy to remain their souls." After hesitating for a while, they then took out spirit herbs and medicines that they found in the ancient continent for several years to feed Cecilia and Shang Yingyu. The spirit herbs and medicine that they had preserved until now were all sacred products to refill the god power or blood qi. Their therapeutic efficacy was really amazing. After Cecilia and Shang Ying were fed with pellets, some colors on their faces finally resumed and their wounds were secure. Shi Yan's world was being burned down. His soul altar was spinning restlessly. His host's soul was draining. He could even see Shang Ying and Cecilia get struck and fall as they were trying to help him. They looked like they were dying. He should be outraged. However, he knew that rage couldn't do anything. He had to be calm to overturn this situation. Shi Yan chose to press down his anger and to subside his negative moods. He tried to restrain his thoughts and find a way to break out of this situation. The abilities of death and life, star, and space powers Upanishad emerged in his head. He wanted to search for a method to break this situation. As his soul altar was shaken and his ethereal extent was burned, his powers Upanishads were about to cease. He was going to lose control soon. A cold air emerged in his head. His mind flickered and his soul quietly drew something from his ethereal extent. A pitch-black bead was drawn out of a corner in the ethereal extent. It was the poison-dipped cold bead and the soul's crystallization of the departed spirit jellyfish. It was the extraordinarily poisonous and icy object. It could gather the toxins, and only the heaven flames could refine it. A plan quickly formed in his head. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. The cold and poisonous power of the poison-dipped cold bead was urged. Shortly after, his ethereal extent had a new change. It felt like the real departed spirit jellyfish was floating there and releasing the cold energy. The ethereal extent section that was being burned recovered after the icy power and the poison had entered. The icy and poisonous powers diffused in Shi Yan's ethereal extent. However, the flames of the origin were the nemesis of the departed jellyfish and its poison-dipped cold bead. Harson's karma flame burst out, dissolving the poison and the cold energy from the bead. However, Shi Yan had seized the chance when the energy of the poison-dipped cold bead was dissolved to save his ethereal extent, his host soul, and the soul altar from the burning flame. He had a little bit of time to do something else. Chapter 1190. The World Purifying Light. Chapter 1190. The World Purifying Light. In the world as bright as a galaxy, the suns, moons, and stars changed again. Billions of light beams from the suns, moons, and stars shot out and congregated into one column. Billions of light beams from the suns, moons, and stars had fused into one column that was as big as an arm. That light column seemed to bring unlimited divine power. It was so dazzling that no one dared to observe it directly. No one even dared to use the soul consciousness to sense. This light column was the essence of the sunlight, moonlight, and starlight. It was some kind of utmost power in this world. It was the world purifying light that could purify the dirty world and destroy the soul. This world purifying light was the absolute power of the star power Upanishad, which was carved in the soul of the precursor from the God clan. It wasn't something that Shi Yan could suddenly figure out by himself. The world purifying light shone on Harson's soul altar. Swoosh! His soul altar turned into ashes in just a blink of an eye. Harson's seal of life had turned into nothing. The burning karma flame disappeared shortly after. It felt like a nightmare. Shi Yan woke up. The ethereal extent returned to his head. When Shi Yan's soul altar came back to its position, Shi Yan felt no vital signs from Harson. Boom! Boom! Harson's bones cracked and exploded before he sank into the bottomless abyss. He disappeared shortly after. There was no aura of Harson in this world anymore. There were no life energy fluctuations. The vestige of his life in this universe seemed to all be erased. It was utter death. Shi Yan checked his body and found that the poison-dipped cold bead had been burned into ashes at that moment too. It wasn't in his sea of consciousness anymore. The last part of the departed spirit jellyfish in this world no longer existed. Rumble, rumble. The ancient continent transmitted terrifying tremors. The ground started to bob as an earthquake was coming. The mountains of the ancient continent collapsed inwardly and fell into an endless space of nothingness. The holy mountain where they were standing was also shaking. The world tree shrank and returned into the deep place in the earth core of the ancient continent. The guiding fruits fell off the tree and scattered near Mia, Phelps, Imofo, and the others. The world tree grew in the center of the holy mountain. After it had sunk into the core of the ancient continent, the holy mountain stood still. The world tree seemed to be the skeleton of the mountain. After it had disappeared, the mountain was like a body without a heart standing still in the middle of the ancient continent. Haig, Song-yun, and Audrey were freed. They looked at the sky above their heads. Yin had followed the world tree and entered the core of the ancient continent. The Genesis fruit disappeared altogether with him. Many guiding fruits were floating by them. They were the keys to enter desolate in the next 10,000 years. Haig and Audrey grimaced. They stood silently and watched the crystal branches of the world tree enter the earth. They could feel some energy from earth and heaven affecting them. Song-yun wasn't dispirited. Quite the contrary. He looked really calm and happy, as if he had finally lifted up the heavy stone that was pressing on his chest. Apparently, Yin got the Genesis fruit. Song-yun thought that it was really good, and it was his real purpose when he visited this ancient continent. His purpose of the trip to the ancient continent was to see Yin taking the Genesis fruit. No one could guess what he was thinking. Song-yun felt so good. He landed on the ground and glanced at Cecilia and Shang-yu, who was slowly recovering. Song-yun took out a tree which looked like a miniature version of the world tree. This tree looked fresh and green, as if it was made of green jade. The life energy moved abundantly inside the tree, and that astounded people. The reincarnation life force tree. Zhao Shan, Zhao Hai, and Sha Zhao screamed in surprise. They looked struck. Cecilia and Song-yun were so weak. They were astounded as they looked at that tree. The reincarnation life force tree was a rare origin incipient grade treasure. It could convert every kind of energy into life energy. It could change the god power or the cold energy of the icy soul cold crystal into vitality. It could resurrect people. There was a saying that unless someone had been turned into blood, he could use the reincarnation life force tree to recover. It was a strange treasure that they only heard from legends. It was a priceless life-secure treasure, indeed. Song-yun's hand was like a knife that halved the tree. He handed the 2 pieces of the tree to Cecilia and Shang-yu. He smiled. With this piece of the god tree, you guys will recover, and you will be even stronger than before. Get well soon. Looking at the 2 pieces of the jade-like tree, Shang-yu and Cecilia were overwhelmed by his unexpected favor. They couldn't speak. Zhao Shan, Zhao Hai, Sha Zhao, and the others were bewildered. They didn't know why Shang-yu had given Shang-yu and Cecilia such a marvel of earth and heaven to recover. Their conditions were stabilized. They just needed time to recover. It was just a waste when Song-yun gave them the reincarnation life force tree. It made Zhao Shan's group speechless. When you see Yin again, please help me tell him to remember the agreement between us. Tell him that I will go to Agate Star area to meet him, Song-yun said, and then headed to the cave to get out of the mountain. Most people didn't have a clue of what was going on. Cecilia and Shang-yu knew that Song-yun wanted to give Yin face by giving them the reincarnation life force tree to recover and improve their bodies. Audrey descended from the sky, her face glum and her eyes dark without a beam of light. She said dispiritedly, Yin was dragged into the core of the ancient continent. He needs time to fuse with the Genesis fruit. After that, he will leave the ancient continent. We will be thrown out of here soon. We don't need to fight anymore. Then, she left the mountain. Zhao Shan signaled Zhao Hai and the others. Then, they supported Cecilia and Shang-yu and followed Audrey. Without the world tree, this holy mountain became hollow like a person without the heart or skeleton. It was just a boring skin bag. Zhao Shan, Zhao Hai, and the others had left. They left Haig, Mia, Phelps, and the warriors of the god clan standing with their heads stooped and their spirits low as if their parents were all dead. Haig landed between them, his face disheartened. He didn't have the majestic aura of the one who could conquer the world anymore. It was the first time he was defeated, and this kind of defeat was some sort of humiliation to him. He didn't even have the right to join the competition. Being the young master of the Bradley family of the god clan, He got the approval of ancient god continent as soon as he was born. It was destined that he would be the top warrior of his clan regarding power or experience. At that time, Harson was the most outstanding warrior of his clan. The Charteris family didn't dare to let Harson fight him once. It was enough to prove his position and intimidation. However, on this continent, the plan he had plotted failed. Shi Yin had taken the Genesis fruit, which was a critical factor to the prosperity of his clan. They knew the meaning of the Genesis fruit better than anyone else. The Genesis fruit could have made ancient god continent gather the energy faster. Each member of the god clan who was native to ancient god continent would have received benefits altogether. Moreover, even the members of the god clan in the other galaxies could have had some magical change in their soul altars because their ancestral planet would have been full of energy once again. Each ancient continent was a metal core of belief to their native creatures. It could bring unimaginable benefits to one race. Once ancient god continent was filled with energy, which balanced the earth and heaven energy there, the shrines of the god clan built there would have marvelous changes. Members of the god clan could make themselves stronger through the shrines physically and mentally. They used to get it, so they knew the mysterious benefits they could get. It was enough to transform the entire race. But Shi Yin had the Genesis fruit now. Would our clan be subdued by the immortal demon clan? Since he got the Genesis fruit, ancient demon continent would gather the remnants of energy from outer space faster to provide the immortal demon warriors with surging energy. They would be stronger shortly after. Phelps muttered. He couldn't accept this fact. However, they didn't know that Shi Yin had fused with the origin of Grace Mainland, which was the ancestral planet of the heavenly monster tribe. That was why Song Yun was so generous. The ones who were about to rise were the members of Heavenly Monster Tribe. Each member of this clan would be boosted with energy because Shi Yin had fused with the Genesis fruit. The tribe that the Imperial Dark Tribe had subdued for years would rise dazzlingly one more time. Unfortunately, Haig, Mia, and Phelps didn't know this. It's not that easy. Our God clan has killed a lot of immortal demon warriors. They don't have many fellows alive. It's not easy for the 4 great races to reproduce. They can't get strong that quickly. We should just seize the chance before they could rise forcefully to destroy them. As long as we can eliminate them, we will still be the overlords of the cosmos. Haig gritted his teeth, talking to his fellows in his dark, low voice. Mia and Phelps sighed. They thought that they could only comfort their minds that way. The God clan had been dominating for a long time. They would never let their clan decline. We should leave. We have to get out of this area and leave the continent. Pondering for a while, Haig continued, perhaps we still have time to clean up those fish before the ancient continent kicks us out. They have Audrey. It's not easy, Mia shook her head. Haig's failure had haunted them like a shadow in their minds. As Haig had lost his intimidation, Mia and Phelps thought that Harson, the one who had been destroyed tragically, was somehow more terrifying than Haig. They had even thought that if Harson hadn't died, he would have been the new face of the God clan's future. Since Haig wasn't eligible to join that final competition, they had looked down on him from that moment. Haig was sensitive enough to feel the down moods of everyone. He became gloomier. He didn't talk more. He just silently walked to the cave to leave the holy mountain by himself. Standing at the entrance of a cave and looking at the most mysterious space in this universe, he felt the reluctance of a loser. Ice blue bubbles suddenly emerged from the 9-tiered blue sky and found the signals of life. They found the warriors by their life magnetic energy, captured them, and lifted them through the sky before leaving this ancient continent. Besides Shi Yin, all of the other survivors on this ancient continent were delivered away. The atmosphere resumed its desolateness. The ancient continent was sealed from now on. Chapter 1191. The Structure of the World. Chapter 1191. The Structure of the World under Earth. A blue planet was by the edge of the dark universe. It was quietly spinning and showing the mountains, lakes, and sea on its surface. It looked like a beautiful picture with earth and heaven energy. It was Grace Mainland. Due to the planet's exhausted earth and heaven energy, Yin had moved most of the warriors living on this continent to Agate Star area. After they had left, earth and heaven energy here was almost used up. The plants and grass were yellowed. The ancient trees were dying. The forests had become deserts. A deadly desolateness took over the continent. The ordinary people living on the continent were also affected by the change of earth and heaven energy. They started to have strange and rare diseases. Their longevity reduced massively. Previously, even an ordinary human who didn't cultivate martial art and take in the earth and heaven energy could live 70 or 80 years without suffering from a major disease. However, after Yin had delivered the warriors away, the longevity of human beings on this continent had reduced to 50, and even a slight sickness could take their life away. Their immune system was weakened unknowingly, so they couldn't explain. They were able to die easily. Normal people didn't know what had happened to their planet. They just knew that the environment where they dwelled had become much more difficult to live on. The air wasn't fresh. It had become polluted easily. They didn't know that the main reason for all of these adversities was because of the earth and heaven energy running out. They would never know the real reason. However, recently, they were startled to find the situation change again. They saw ancient trees grow green buds. Oases appeared in the deserted areas. The air became fresher. After each breath, people could feel much better. Some sick people were healed magically. They glowed in good health. No sickness could kill them. Many weakened people were strengthened unknowingly. Their feeble limbs became strong, and even their crooked backs were straightened up once again. The ocean and lakes became clear with many fishes and shrimps. The fishermen hailed at this miracle. Many cities and towns in White Cloudland, the endless sea, and divine Great Land had the biggest crops ever. Everything they grew gave them a harvest that they could never have imagined. The crops that needed half a month were ripe after just 2 days. In each corner of the continent, each area, each nation, and city, people gradually found the world changing. Some low-realm warriors who stayed on this ancient continent found that their cultivation progressed faster. They could see that they could stabilize their minds and realm quickly. The earth and heaven energy in the world where they lived was increasing amazingly. They thought that it was a beautiful dream of theirs. No one could believe it was real. They knew from their precursors that this continent used to have many experts who had left their homeland to the other star area. Their precursors said that they hadn't had a hope of living in this land. It wasn't suitable for the warriors to cultivate. The reason why they stayed was that their realms were too low. They weren't eligible to leave. They used to regret, whine, and be desperate. Currently, the change of land under their feet had brought them to hope for a new life. It seemed like the mighty heaven had opened a new door for them. People were so thrilled. The shrines and temples in the entire Grace mainland were packed with people. They came to show their gratitude to God. They thought that God didn't really abandon this land. They had experienced despair and hopelessness. They had endured a lot of disasters. And now, seeing the world turning into what they had in their dreams, everybody burst out in tears. They believed that God had heard them. They were now taken care of and protected. In another dark star area so far away from Grace mainland, this place had no light, colors, or stars. It didn't even have any sound. It looked like a corner of the universe, which had been sealed for a long time. It used to be a famous continent that was well known around the universe. Ancient Demon Continent. The rough surface of the vast continent had countless holes and long gray rivers. The sky of this area was overcast year-round. The entire continent had the dead aura of a senile, dying person. It seemed like the planet was about to become a dead star. It couldn't nurture any creature. It was Ancient Demon Continent, one of the 5 ancient continents that were born at the dawn of this universe. By the edge of death, it was revived. Anyway, its reviving speed was so slow. It was 100 times slower than Grace mainland. In the dry sea, the yellowed forest, and on the cracked soil, the thundering roars and howling rose. The noises were loud enough to shake the entire place. The massive beasts as big as mountains emerged. Pythons, 3-legged gold crows, dragons, unicorns, phoenixes, and other kinds of beasts emerged. They were several thousand meters long, which made them look like the moving mountains. They were the members of the heavenly monster tribe and the purest bloodline of the monster clan. They were one of the 4 great creatures of the world. They had unlimited god power as soon as they were born. Many members of the heavenly monster tribe were roaring and howling at the sky. They then transformed into their human bodies and became tens of thousands of times smaller. They had a human's upper body and a snake's tail, or a human body with a bird's head. Some had their bodies covered with flaming scales, and some even had red iron bodies. They looked strange and unique. The members of the heavenly monster tribe had transformed into their humanoid form to gather from different corners of ancient demon continent. They congregated in a valley with many strange rocks. This valley had many gray, brown, green, cyan rocks, which were carved into the statues of the giant demogorgons with green faces and yellow fangs. They held weapons in their hands while they rolled their eyes and posed their terrifying, majestic makings. Seeing these statues, people couldn't help but bow in worship. Even the members of the heavenly monster tribe had to retrieve their brutal auras, showing their fear and respect for the demogorgons here. If Shi Yin could come here, he would have found a giant statue of the demogorgon which was very similar to the demogorgon phantom he had created from the negative energy. The members of the heavenly monster tribe appeared in the rocky forest where the statue stood in their human shape. They came and surrounded a formation surrounded by 9 demogorgon statues. It was a round formation that was as big as a football court. It had many fine lines weaving with each other, glowing in a faint, cold halo. Those lines were wiggling like worms. The energy waves that could clear the space emitted from that ancient formation. A bright silver vortex was slowly formed. It was another space passage. Song Yun did it, said a brawny man with a human head and a snake body. He had long, dark, green hair, which was with a closer look, created by thousands of small and thin snakes. Those snakes had their tails connected to his skull. He looked so fearsome indeed. God wants our heavenly monster tribe to be strong. Another man shouted like a roaring dragon. This clansman had a bird head connected to a human body. His head was a silver eagle head, which was cold and dark. It made people think that it was made of iron or steel. It's time to wake up the holy ancestor. Perhaps he has sensed the magical change even though he's sleeping. This Song Yun kid isn't bad. He's worth our merit of teaching him for years. After the battle that year, our heavenly tribe will never bear the same loss. In the next 10,000 years, we will thrive. A member of the heavenly monster tribe with flaming scales covered his body laughed crudely. He shouted and then jumped into the vortex. The experts of the heavenly monster tribe laughed and walked shoulder by shoulder. They entered the vortex. They were going to wake up their holy ancestor who had been sleeping for so many years. Their holy ancestor was going to bring this world a happy surprise. Dash. Devil Blood Star, Agate Star Area. Blood Devil, Gute, Bath, Ghost Hunter, Leona, and Fei Lon were waiting for something by the edge of the star. Everybody looked stern, waiting in silence. There seemed to be an invisible, unknown pressure applied to them. Rumble, rumble, rumble. The ear-piercing explosions echoed. Slowly, battleships started to pierce through the thick layers of clouds. Those battleships looked shattered with blood stains and patches on broken areas. Some damaged areas sounded squeaking as if its components were going to fall off at any minute. Those battleships were massive with different flags. Some belonged to Potion and Tool Pavilion, Fighting League and Dark Shadow Ghostly Prison, and Divine Light. Several thousand massive battleships carried around 1 million warriors of various clans and forces. Fu Wei, Bettina, and Yun, Jaduo, and Timlin of the Potion and Tool Pavilion were there too. On the Fighting League side, they saw Feng Han the Hegemon, Xia Xian Yin of the Windstorm War Department, Feng Yin, Qi Zhe, Miao Rong, and more. The Master of the Divine Light, Zi Yao, Sana, and Zhu Bo also emerged. There were more forces, big and small, and the famous warriors of Agate Star Area. They all looked like they had undergone all kind of adversities. On their battleships, the warriors looked pale. Many of them had lost their limbs. Apparently, they just had a bloody battle, which they had lost. This force was equal to half of the combined force of the entire Agate Star area. They didn't stay in their respective regions but crossed thousands of miles to the Devil Blood Star. "Make a safe route," Blood Devil shouted all of a sudden. The experts of the monster clan scattered and arranged rest stops for the coming battleships. They were so busy. Blood Devil, Gute, and Bath were the leaders of the monster clan and demon clan in Agate Star area. They frowned and their faces were dark and glum. The Ascot family, the Fernandez of the God Clan, and the Bai family of Dry Bone Star area had joined hands to attack Agate Star area for 10 years. The Ascot family opened a space passage that they used to seal before. The massive army of the God Clan came in waves. They wanted to crush the dark shadow ghostly prison of Agate Star area. Feng Han's fighting league was defeated shortly after. His warriors were killed. He didn't have the power to resist. The God Clan scattered and attacked different areas of Agate Star area. They hadn't had a defeat. Leona commanded the new Blood Legion she had created from Monster Clan and Demon Clan to vanguard and storm Dark Shadow Ghostly Prison. It was the first time they made the God Clan pay a big price and temporarily hold their invasion. In that battle, Leona had commanded the Monster and Demon warriors to destroy almost 5,000 warriors of the Ascot family and the Bai family. All of them were at King God Realm and above. Chapter 1192. The One Who Has Disappeared for 10 Years. Chapter 1192. The One Who Has Disappeared for 10 Years. It was the first defeat of the God Clan's great army since they had invaded Agate Star area. The Blood Legion commanded by Leona had stopped the God Clan and made them pause to adjust their force. That battle had encouraged the fighting spirit of all warriors of Agate Star area. More forces cheered up. The war in Agate Star area didn't tilt to one side anymore. However, in that battle, the Monster Clan and Demon Clan had to bear a big loss too. Several years after that, they could only take turns in joining the small battle and becoming the knife that continuously cut the body of the God Clan that gave them minor wounds. Unfortunately, the aura of the God Clan was strong and brutish. They had many elite warriors. In addition to the Ascot family, the Fernandez family and the Bai family also came. 2 years ago, Leona fought the God Clan one more time. She produced a significant result of killing 3,000 warriors of the God Clan. However, they had a bigger loss in that battle. Leona's team had to retreat to defend Devil Blood Star. They had even smashed the Mother and Child Star linking formation that connected Dark Shadow Ghostly Prison and Devil Blood Star. They were afraid that the God Clan could track them down using that formation. In the past 2 years, Leona, Monster Clan, and Demon Clan had been in Devil Blood Star. They were training their warriors for a short period. Through these 2 years, the forces like Fighting League, Divine Light, Potion and Tool Pavilion, Fire Clan, and Ice Clan had formed an alliance. They had joined hands and tried their best to resist the God Clan. They had battled God Clan at every corner of Agate Star area. Throughout these 2 years, each life star of Agate Star area had become a battlefield. Every warrior of Agate Star area had become a soldier. The Agate Star area had so many inspiring stories. The clansmen of different clans had used their lives to protect their homelands. Many warriors decided to detonate their own soul altars to cause a bitter damage to the God Clan. To protect their children and families, they had shown their best valor and stormed towards the God Clan like a moth heading to a flame. However, their enemy was too strong. In the past 2 years, the clansmen of different forces around Agate Star area had to encounter the slaughtering every day, every second. Half a year ago, Potion and Tool Pavilion had cooperated with Fighting League, Divine Light, Fire Clan, Ice Clan, and Wood Clan to ambush the God Clan. That battle had buried dozens of thousands of warriors. After that battle, the alliance created by Potion and Tool Pavilion had failed. They couldn't stop the God Clan's invasion anymore, and they continuously retreated and gave their large territories to God Clan. The God Clan was able to swagger around, and no one stood up to resist them anymore. Every time the others stepped back, the God Clan claimed another life star and closed their circle. Now, 2/3 of Agate Star area had fallen into the control of the God Clan. However, they hadn't relaxed and continued to plan for the final war. The last place that stood still in Agate Star area had a force to resist the great army of the God Clan. It was at Devil Bloodstar where the Monster Clan and Demon Clan were based. Leona and the experts of the Monster Clan and Demon Clan had proven that only they could forcefully resist the God Clan's great army. Thus, Potion and Tool Pavilion, Divine Light, and Fighting League couldn't help but gather here. They came to Devil Bloodstar with the hope of joining the Monster Clan and Demon Clan to resist the God Clan. After their battleships anchored in Devil Bloodstar, leaders of the other forces proactively came to Blood Devil, Gute, and Bath. They looked so worried and a dark shadow was cast over them. "We could only count on you guys." Fu Wei was calm like an orchid, her white face filled with tiredness. As soon as she arrived, she bowed to greet Blood Devil, Bath, and Gute. Right now, Fu Wei was the real pavilion master of Potion and Tool Pavilion. She had decoded the canon of Potion and Tool Pavilion and merged it with her ethereal extent. Recently, the reason that made Potion and Tool Pavilion the control center of the Union was that they had a lot of resources. They had created a lot of battleships and weapons for other forces. Fu Wei alone had refined many divine-grade weapons. Although they weren't as strong as original incipient-grade weapons, they had given new thoughts to elders of the Potion and Tool Pavilion. They seemed to find the method to refine the original incipient-grade weapons. However, they didn't have enough materials to try. All went for Fu Wei's merit and that cannon. "It's awful that we can't contact Fiery Rain Star area. I wonder what has happened to you, Sean. Since we can't exchange information, we can't do many things and take risks," sighed Leona. She had become the backbone of the Union. Whether it was the great leader of the Monster Clan, Demon Clan, or Fu Wei, the experts of the Divine Light and Fighting League had deemed this fearsome-looking woman as the new commander of Agate Star area. Leona had used each of her battles to prove her astounding commanding talents. The new Blood Legion she had commanded consisted of a bunch of true bloodthirsty soldiers. They were the only force that could strongly resist the iron shoes of the God Clan. The God Clan is also invading Fiery Rain Star area. I think they don't have extra effort to care about us. We can't count on them. Fu Wei hesitated for a while, and then said weakly, "Potion and Tool Pavilion used to have a connection to Fiery Rain Star area. I heard that their situation isn't better than ours. To deal with them, the God Clan has mobilized 2 families." Hearing her, people all changed their faces. 5 years ago, Benny went to Fiery Rain Star area. We haven't heard anything from him. If he were here, it would be easier for me, said Leona begrudgingly. Hearing the name Benny, people had the strange light in their eyes, but they sighed right after that. 5 years ago, Benny had fought Leona once with the same amount of soldiers. Benny had lost that game slightly, and he was able to trouble Leona a lot. After that battle, Yushan and Shaowen strongly requested Benny to go with them to Fiery Rain Star area because their situation was really dangerous at that time. Blood Devil's team discussed for a while, and then agreed to let Benny leave with Yushan and Shaowen. They left with the elite squad of Fiery Rain Star area. They wanted to go back to their homeland and strike the God Clan hard. Then, they hadn't received any news from Benny ever since. Leona knew Benny's talents. She thought that if Benny were here, he could share her load of pressure. She could have saved more energy to control the whole situation. Although Fu Wei, Feng Han, and the others were really strong and they had many incipient God Realm experts here, not many of them could help her in commanding the field. The army of the God Clan knows that we're in Devil Bloodstar. They're after us. Soon, they will come here. Fu Wei was still calm. We don't have much time. I've discussed with my team. All of us will listen to you. You can order and arrange us. Everybody looked at Leona with hope. We can't stop them. Leona shook her head and said honestly, our force isn't enough to stop the God Clan's invasion. If we face them directly, we will lose. And if we gather in one spot, they can capture us at once. Then what should we do? Asked Feng Han indifferently. Leona looked at him and contemplated. Even if we scatter, we will be destroyed one by one. If we gather, although we can damage the God Clan hard, none of us will survive. 50 warriors at Ethereal God Realm can create a brute formation using their Power Upanishad and can kill one first guy of incipient god realm of our side. Most of the warriors of the god clan understand using strange formations. They have years of experience. We don't have that kind of experience. Everybody quieted down. Now, they regretted that they hadn't sent the experts of their clans to Leona to train earlier. If the experts of the forces everywhere were trained for 5 or 6 years, they would have the competence to fight the God Clan. But now, time wasn't waiting up for them. Staying in Agate Star area, we can gather our forces for the final battle. I'm sure that we can damage the God Clan severely, but we won't win. We will all die. Leona considered her words and said, I heard that you guys have a secret space passage that you can use to escape. As long as you aren't in Agate Star area when the war happens, you can be safe. Let's discuss and see what we should do. The experts of the other forces had laid their hopes on Leona. They thought that she could lead everybody to resist the God Clan. Today, listening to her, they felt that the truth was too harsh. They looked baffled as they thought about Leona's suggestion. They didn't dare to play with the future of their clans. They left the hall and privately discussed it with the elders of their clans. They wanted to find a solution quickly. Potion and Tool Pavilion always has fast news. Do you have any information about him? Leona sudden asked. Pausing for a while, she continued, It has been 10 years. Precursor Shang Chun had predicted precisely. What he tells us happens. It has been 10 years. If nothing bad happened, he should be here, right? Fei Lan and Ka Tua behind her were startled. They focused on Fu Wei and listened. Even Blood Devil, Bath, and Gu Te had put on their stern faces as they looked at Fu Wei. They knew who Leona had just referred to. Under people's yearning eyes, Fu Wei shook her head sadly. We have no information at all. Everybody looked extremely disappointed. If he was here, perhaps he would know how to save Agate Star area and bring us hope. It's too bad that he isn't here. We can't save Agate Star area, concluded Leona. She knew that Shi Yin was the successor of the bloodthirsty master. She understood that even the bloodthirsty force had stayed hidden. Their force was still really big and was hiding around the universe. Although she didn't know how strong this force was, she believed that if Shi Yin could gather them, they could easily teach the Ascot family, the Fernandez family, and the Bai family a lesson that they would never forget. She strongly believed that the bloodthirsty force was still as strong as before. They were all waiting for their king and for the earth and heaven to designate them some mission. Leona's words silenced people. They were all heavy-hearted. The Devil Blood Star seemed to be covered by a thick layer of dark clouds. People felt like they didn't see the sun. The pressure from the God Clan was like a mountain that suffocated them. But someone didn't feel that. Or, he wasn't human. He was Ghost Hunter. Ghost Hunter came from Grace Mainland, and he got the core inheritance in the Heavenly Monster Mountain Range. Recently, he found that his energy, his power Upanishad, and even his body were having some transformation. It seemed like an angel was watching him and strengthening him every second. His competence enhanced rapidly. He didn't know the reason, but he was sure that something magical had happened, which had resonated with his bloodline. He had become stronger day after day. He had even thought that the God Clan wasn't enough to scare him. This unceasingly increasing power had given him belief and hope. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.